good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope it was easy to find because the event is very big and there's too many things going on. This workshop has been designed following a few years workshop that we did last year and the year before. And the year before, we started with something called, I think the first year was about imagining futures of AI can bring us an AI-driven life. Last year, with the help of Kitrhona and the TASC team, we created a workshop called Future of Work. And the goal was, and Stuart Russell and a few others were here, we'd imagine how work would be in the future, how we design it, and what's going to be the impact on society, economy, and so forth. And then we pushed it under the AI for Good umbrella by saying, if AI is part of our life tomorrow in 20 years or 30 years, removing all the imagery that we have from Hollywood and films and science fiction and all the authors, how we're going to live life? How we're going to be having personal communication, how we're going to be enjoying knowledge, sharing family moments, traveling, mobility. So in an AI-driven world tomorrow, what is that we're going to be living with? And instead of asking everyone to forecast or predict, which is a difficult exercise, let's just simply imagine a day in the life of the future and try to figure out how this day in the life will make sense from a societal perspective, from economic perspective, from environment, from economic perspective and environmental, but also from a personal connections with others. So there is no truth in there, but there are so many different ways that we can imagine the future. With Francesca Rossi, I'm part of a group at the OECD about AI futures, and the exercise is different, right? It's about figuring out what's going to happen with AI and impact of AI. But here we're trying to do, and she's going to probably share a few of those insights later today. But today we're, thanks to Stephanie and Niall and Kitrhona and everybody else that have been designing this workshop. The goal is really to collectively imagine moments of life that we desire. And how could those moments make sense? And the goal for us is to do it through the different moments that have been designed, but also later today, as we design those moments and those worlds that we think, that you think are going to be interesting, we want you to go and test it out and check with others how those words make sense, and if people approve or disapprove or connect or disconnect. And tomorrow we're going to be revealing what happened with all of that, but I'll leave the secrets to be revealed little by little. But welcome again, and I think it's exciting to work together to designing futures that we all want. And the exercise has been designed with a lot of thought behind it, so hopefully you get a good day out of this. Thank you.
We have a problem. And it's got something to do with AI futures. And we want to unpack that a little bit. Problems are really good. Problems are really good. Disagreements are really good because that's where the creativity comes out. So let's think about this as a problem just for a moment. We want to get up, think about how we can make the world a little bit better in a minute. But we have a real challenge on our hands, and that anger that you felt in that moment, that Agritech conference speaks a little bit to this, doesn't it, Stephanie? And I'll invite you now to sort of take us into that problem statement and who's not in the room possibly.
Yes, we've called the workshop AI Futures. And often when you hear those words, AI Futures, what comes into your mind? You're thinking about the future, how we're going to meet with each other. What comes to your mind? Often it's a vision that is predetermined. There's a line of sight, there's one future, and this is where we're going. Is that how you feel future happens? No? The future doesn't exist yet. We're creating it in every moment. And as a society especially, we are, every step we take is a decision we're making towards a future or another. I've asked that question in past conferences and said, well, how do you imagine, how do you think we're going to meet with each other in the future? And people were answering, we're going to be on holograms, and we're going to be doing I don't know, thinking that we're together, and you know, that's how we're going to spend time together. And then you ask another question and said, but how do you want to be sharing moments and meeting with other people in the future? And then you have all sorts of pictures that came in people's mind that were around, or around a campfire with friends, or you know, it was very, very different way of thinking of futures. And every single time you have those thoughts about what it could be, you multiply that by the number of people in the room, and you multiply that by the number of thoughts that they already have imagined, and you have there hundreds of different possible futures, preferred futures, probable futures that are in this very room. So the aim of today is really to say, well, actually, yeah, that's fine. There's an overall big noise about where the future is supposed to go, and we're saying this is an alternative views of futures that are coming from the communities and the people that are going to live through it, either for themselves or for their descendants or for their community or their culture. That's the problem we're working on today. Also, in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to think about the type of futures we're going to be living in, where I will be able to help us and not accelerate the negatives.
And Stephanie, the people that are in the room are here to represent their perspective. Did you want to give us a little bit of a commentary on the people that aren't here? You've got a term, a phrase you use for these people that we might want to reference throughout the day?
Yeah, so often when we work with AI, we work with companies or governments who have a lot of data, because you need data to be able to develop algorithm, and a lot of communities don't have either the language or the literacy or the data to actually be represented in what AI is being done at the moment, how it's being designed and developed. So I call that the usual suspects of AI is all the places where you actually expect to see AI being utilized. And then the unusual suspects of AI, the communities and the people that could be using AI for their own benefits, but they're the unusual. It's going to be harder to try to involve them, to involve us, because we don't necessarily have either the literacy or the voice or even the communication means to access those tools. So yeah, that's a term that at times will refer back to the unusual suspects of AI, and I count myself in one of those.
Yep, and so I would invite you just for a moment to just take a little bit of a reflective pause, if I may. And we've got your workbooks there, and I haven't said anything about them, and we're going to get our panel on in a minute. The workbook was really an opportunity to do some first-person work, some introspection, some work on yourself about what's drawn you here. And we've tried to provoke you into thinking about why you've even walked in the room. And Felipe and I had a great chat. He's very clear about why he's here. He's got his unusual suspects, and he's quite focused. You're very focused on them, aren't you? You've got a good, clear mind around who those people are and what you want to represent on their behalf. So I encourage you to reflect on why you're here, who you're representing, who is not in the room that you believe you could represent, and give agency. Even in this little experiment we're doing today, okay? We are make-believing and we're playing. But think, just think and reflect. And we really do, this isn't for anybody else but you. We're not going to ask you to read anything out. It's your internal reflections, because I think we do spend a lot of the collective we, and there's always a lot of talk about the people out there. What about the person who's sitting right there? So do some work on that. Reflect on why you're here. And did you need to butt in and tell me something?
Yes, we actually haven't taken the time for the people who arrived a bit later to pick up a picture and have a couple of minutes conversation with people next to them
Yeah, so we'll
about what is it that brought them here, and what attracted them in that picture especially. And so if you want to do that and then have a bit of a huddle with the person next to you, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes before the panel starts. So grab a picture, have a chat, talk about why you're here, and maybe talk about your unusual suspect. Who would you like to give a voice in the room today by your representation? pushy button here. Okay, I think we're getting ready for our panel. Getting ready for our panel discussion, and Stephanie, Jose is online. Carolyn is off, probably having a chat. Oh, there she is. Come on down. So did you want to just grab a seat? That's cool. Okay, I think we're going to kick off, everybody. We've got our panel here, and I'm just looking at their pictures to see if they look like their pictures, and they do. So that's good. We've got the right people in the room. Terrific. We're going to be running this in quite a structured way with some Q&A, which Stephanie will lead and facilitate. And I don't really have much more other than I'll let you introduce the intent, because I think it's really important when we have panels to be quite focused on the intent of the Q&A, to really make sure we get an outcome that contributes to what we're trying to do today. Okay. And Stephanie's going to guide that with some focused questions on the topic at hand. So over to you. Yes.
Thank you very much. We have the pleasure today to have Jérôme Duberry, Dr. Sandy Chong, Caroline Gans-Combe, and Jose Ramos, who's online, joining us for this first panel. It's a bit special. We have people coming from very different angles, and we are going to talk together about how we're going to envision transformative futures for collective benefit. And you'll see that each of them are really quite interesting people. They will give you a little bit of a couple of minutes of what's their background and how they've come to that subject to talk today. I don't know if I'm starting by Jose. Yeah, I'm starting by Jose. Jose is joining us from Australia. And we're going to wait and see if he can get his image online. Oh, good. Thank you, Janita. So AI futures that are fair, inclusive, and responsible will require community awareness, engagement, and a means for people to have agency. So this panel will provide approaches to futures and dimensions of futures that will need to be in place for inclusive AI futures to exist. And Jose, thank you very much for catching up with us. It's a bit late out there. Do you have
Pleasure to be here.
Is that the Aurora Australis that you have behind you?
Exactly. I'm outside right now, freezing my.
Okay.
No, we actually did. During the solar flares, a few weeks ago, we actually got it here. It was pretty amazing that it got this far.
Was
So, but no, this is not real.
Could you give us a couple of minutes for, say, introduction about your background and what brought you here, please?
Oh, well, look, my background, I've been in future studies for 25 years. Yeah, I mean, my PhD thesis was on critical globalization studies and alternative futures of globalization. So a bit of a political science. And the last, 15 years of my life, I've just done a lot of work with a lot of different organizations and people from all over the world. I really focus on anticipatory experimentation, how to support experimentation that links up with our preferred future. And I also focus on participatory futures and critical futures. So participatory futures is how we bring futures to the public and make interventions in the public imagination as well. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I'll come back to you and we'll have a deeper chat about all of that if that's okay. But I'll introduce the other members of the panel. Yeah. So Jérôme, did you want to give us a little bit of background, a couple of minutes on what brought you here? And
should I answer the questions you asked me to?
We'll do that in a minute. Just
okay.
A couple of minutes so that people get to know you a bit.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much to the TASC Platform and our colleagues at the Geneva Graduate Institute to invite me here. And I'm also very pleased to speak right after José, because I'm very much inspired by his approach of future action research that inspired a project that I will be talking about today. Why I'm here? Because I started some research on the participation of civil society in global environmental governance. So how to engage with civil society. We talked about unusual suspects early on. And for me, the participation of citizens, civil society, and more recently youth is really very much at the center of what I'm researching at the moment. And in particular also related to the question of literacy. And because everywhere you read, if you read the recent documents about AI governance, and proposals everywhere, it says that AI governance should be inclusive. Okay, great, but how do you do that? And how do you do that concretely? And one way is to start with AI literacy. So this is very much at the center of the project I'll be talking about. And I'll finish by saying that the project and the research that we're conducting at the moment is on AI, the democratic and societal implications of AI. A couple of years ago, now it's clear that we have some issues, but also opportunities. A couple of years ago, it was not the case. And
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jérôme. Sandy, you've joined us from another Australian in the room. You're being invaded today. It's lovely to have you here. Could you give us a little bit of an introduction?
This one? Okay, great, brilliant. Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm from Western Australia, but I'm originally born in Singapore. So I live in a very interesting culture of East, West, and also, of course, the First Nation land. Today, I would like to share some perspective on how digital inclusion and also AI inclusion would actually affect the minorities, but more importantly, the indigenous people. There are lots of risks involved and challenges, but I would also like to challenge everyone later on when I share further on how looking at it from an indigenous perspective can actually help us create better AI. Thank you.
What a fantastic topic too. It's just, I need like just 5 hours for each of you. Caroline.
Yeah.
Yes, hello, I'm Caroline Combe. I'm French and Swiss as a matter of fact, so not from down under at all. So I'm a data person and a math person. So I'll be talking about, well, what is called algorithmic invisibility.
Could you talk?
So, oh, I'm in the mic. I'm talking about. So I will be talking about algorithmic invisibility, and well, the issues that are raised, sorry, by those kind of problematic that, well, data are not really adequately either collected, used, prep, and all those kind of issues. So it's going to focus, and I'm going to focus on mostly data issue and a bit of probability. You will forget. I won't bore you with equation. Stephanie stopped me of doing this. So I won't bore you with equation, but I'm going to talk about the probabilities, because everything is probability, including AI, and most of AI, and it's even worse than that. I'm going to pronounce a very, very impolite word. Don't kill me, please. Everything is about quantum, because AI is we are entering a quantum world. You can ask question after.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So Jose, we're back to you. I mean, you've been pretty much the inspiration for me too of, being here today. We've done work. I've attended a few of your workshops and learned so much from it. Tell us, from your perspective, what's at stake here?
I have a presentation to share. Should I just start that?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, great. So let me just put that on. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me. It's been really a pleasure to get a chance to think about this, and just a pleasure to be with all of you. And yeah, just very inspired by this exploration. Okay, here we go. So the title here is, what kinds of intelligence is the future asking us to bring forth? And so I want to decenter intelligence as a concept, but I also want to ask what the future is wanting from us, because I think it's wanting more than artificial intelligence. I know this is about artificial intelligence, but I think artificial intelligence is about something much, much bigger than artificial intelligence. So, okay. And the first thing is, technology. Humans gain so much from it, and I think the first thing the first sort of inclination we have is, when we think about technology, is as human beings, well, quite beneficial. And this has been going on for a very long time. Human beings have been using technology for at least 500,000 years, maybe more. I'm not an anthropologist or an archaeologist, but when I read the literature, it was Homo erectus that mastered fire and began the first, in a sense, weaponization for hunting. And because of this, we have something very deeply woven into us, which is what I would call our humanness. That technology is a deep expression of humanness, that humans are technological beings. There's different ways of thinking about technology. We produce technology, we use technology. And to me, that doesn't make as much sense as humans as actual technological beings, that our very nature is woven into the production of technology. And in fact, when Marshall McLuhan coined that term, I don't think he even knew what the anthropologists and the archaeologists later discovered. They now believe that the human brain expanded because we mastered fire and because we were able to learn the technology of cooking. Cooking was such a transformational technology for us, and reshaped our physiology. So this relationship with technology, I don't even know if you can call it a relationship as much as an expression of who we are at a very deep level. And that technological beingness has reached a point of extreme contradiction. So we have now come to the point where we're so successful at technology that it has endangered our future survival. You know, and I love this this mashup of hokusai. You know, beautiful waves crashing down, but full of junk, right? Because we produce so many things. We love eating all these things, but they end up in our water systems. Nuclear technology is probably the most pointy example of a contradiction, of a human technological contradiction in who we are. The climate crisis, well, it was this innocuous invention of the internal combustion engine in the 1910s, right? And here we are with all these powerful machines that do so much work for us. I love these machines. And yet the contradiction is so real. And now we're venturing even further into the realms of technological contradictions with drone warfare and all the ethical implications that entails. And of course, the biochemical industry that's produced all of these amazing drugs for killing pain, et cetera, but here we are with a opioid epidemic that's not just in the United States. It's now spreading to other parts of the world. It's really devastating and incredibly heartbreaking. And the late great sociologist Ulrich Beck talked about what we had created as a global risk society, that we have created a system where we are perpetually producing more and more risks. And he said that the contemporary industrial science system is producing risk. Even while we're trying to solve some things, it produces ever new dimensions of risk. And we can see AI in this way. And then we have films like Dio Machina and The Terminator that express our underlying unease, our underlying fears. You know, film is how we express our unconscious fears or emotions. And these are essentially saying to us, I'm not sure about what we're doing here. I'm not one of those people that believe, you know, AI is going to come alive and decide to wipe us out, because I don't think AI will have its own consciousness. That's not part of my, you know, my epistemological boundary. But it does express, we are expressing these deep unconscious fears about where we're heading with this. So when we have an unconscious species bias, AI cannot be for good. And I think the first thing that we have to grapple with is this reality that we are technological beings and that we're producing contradictions. And that, as the sociologist Ulrich Beck has pointed out, we've not only produced these contradictions, we've accelerated or even multiplied the speed at which these contradictions are taking place. And until we actually grapple with that point, I can't really see us being able to grapple with AI. And then there's also the political economy. The political economy is so fundamental. You know, 25 years ago, at the turn of the millennium, we thought the internet was going to liberate us all. And that was the zeitgeist of the moment. And that was what everyone was saying. And 20 years later, you know, we're in a pandemic and there's social polarization and families are being ripped apart by the construction of algorithms that incentivize argumentation, incentivize conflict between people. So the political economy is very fundamental, and technology is embedded within these political economies. So technology requires socialization. It needs to be embedded within human norms and needs, and it needs to be aligned with the futures that we want. We haven't had proper discussions about that. And technology requires ecologization. There's another term just decided to make up. It needs to be embedded within the needs and the limits of the web of life. And so, so how do we do this socialization and ecologization? So what I would, you know, just, this is provocation. This is, you know, providing some food for thought here. I think this requires multiple intelligences that are going to help to socialize a technology like AI. So I want to decenter this idea that it's about artificial intelligence. I think we need a pantheon of intelligences, or an ecology of intelligences. De Souza Santos talks about an ecology of knowledges that are going to be able to socialize. So we need, first of all, ecological intelligence. This is a photo of, or not a photo, depiction of Edo period Japan, where regenerative farming was done, very sophisticated regenerative farming, something that's been lost, but now it's coming back. We need, ecological intelligence also includes understanding where we are in the web of life, and it contrasts to, this kind of man over earth kind of view. We need anticipatory intelligence. So we need to create ways in which we can anticipate the future, understand the future. We need regenerative intelligence. Here's a depiction of Tenochtitlan, when the Spaniards came to Mesoamerica over 500 years ago. And, very sophisticated systems for regenerative agriculture. So what about regenerative intelligence? What about social intelligence? What about our capacity to work together and to solve each other's problems? What about interspecies intelligence? The intelligence that we might learn from another species. How about geoplanetary intelligence, where we learn what a planetary scale of concern means? Narrative intelligence, where we learn deep time and understand what that means. Epistemological intelligence, where we can understand many ways of knowing. Or maybe even heuristic intelligence, where we master the logic of learning and action cycles at a planetary scale. And these kinds of, this ecology of knowledges, this ecology of intelligences has the capacity to socialize technology and bring forth new ways. And within that, I can see AI being for good. And that will require really being able to understand and interact at a much more sophisticated and nuanced way. So one way to do this is participatory futures. And participatory futures is a way of bringing futures questions and issues to the public. There was as an example of this, there was a project called Moral Machine, which asked the public about how algorithms should be governed, right? We haven't really been asked as a public, how should algorithms be governed? But this is such a fundamental question. So these kind of questions for AI need to be brought into this broader ecology of intelligences and knowledge. And what do the species think? What about an interspecies council of the future? Maybe other species have something to say about how AI needs to be governed as well. You can see the report on participatory futures on the NESTA website called Our Futures, by the People, for the People. Again, just a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks to everyone who's here.
Thank you very much, Jose. It's I knew we would have the full Jose, and it's great because I think all of that work needs to start with some provocations that break a little bit the way we usually think, so that we can make some space for a different way of thinking, a different way of imagining. Maybe I think there was so much content, Sandy, in what Jose has brought up about that, the intelligence and all of the knowledge and the wisdom that we have learned over the millennium, that should be part of that conversation. your experience in all of that? You've worked a lot with Aboriginal communities and Indigenous communities. I'll give you the mic.
Thank you, Jose, as well, for the insightful presentation. My relationship with the indigenous people dates back to 2018 when I first became the first Asian to be appointed onto the WA Indigenous Tourism Council. Before that, I've already lived in Australia for 25 years, but I never felt welcome. And the indigenous people opened my eyes and opened my heart to a very different way of doing things. I was formerly an academic. I consider myself a scientific person. In fact, yesterday they just said that I'm now a member of the Geneva Macro Lab Scientific Advisory Board member. So that was quite interesting. People still consider me as a scientist after I left academia for 12 years. But I also see that there's a lot of science and a lot of rigorous kind of content in their culture. And also currently I'm advising the Noongar Chamber of Commerce in Australia on how to set up an ESG platform. Okay, so we have the SDG as a way of measuring and also try to use it as a framework for reporting and compliance. So now people are saying, okay, very often, you know, First Nations benefits and First Nations interests are more of an afterthought. So we decided to set up a platform that can be used all over the world by all the indigenous people. So this is particularly relevant to Western Australia because we are a resource-rich state. We make a lot of our money through mining, and we export a lot of our coal, our copper, our critical minerals that is necessary to power our new energy to all of the world, yeah, particularly the Chinese as well. So I suppose I'm not an indigenous person, but I see myself as a process expert. And this is what I uncover, or this is what I observe. There's this really interesting study that was done in North America, Canada, where they actually get an AI to pick what religion he or she or it chooses to be. Near the end of that experiment, the AI basically said, no, I don't think I'll be accepted in Christianity. I don't think I will be accepted in Islam or Buddhism. It's kind of sad, but I can relate to Aboriginal culture. What was really interesting was because it doesn't have all these kind of limitation, and it doesn't say because you don't have a soul, or because you don't have a spirit and therefore you are not human. And this is further verified by a researcher in Western Australia as well, an author who wrote a book about this little girl who's looking at AI from an Aboriginal perspective. What was really interesting was, you know, it was basically posited that just because you don't have a soul doesn't make you inhuman, right? And that the fact that you can support human being, you are there to help us, and so on and so forth. Again, essentially very similar to the Asian philosophy. We do not see human race as something or somewhat more superior than other species. So when you look at the ancient cultures like the Aboriginals, the Chinese, the Asians, we see all natures to be on equal paths. Whether you are a dog, a cat, you're a plant, you're a bug, we all have a life, and therefore you should be respected. And because of that kind of philosophy of thinking, we wonder if we're asking the right question when we look at a very Western influence kind of narrative here, when we look at AI. Number one, to start off, we call them artificial intelligence, right? Just the word artificial is already limiting our thought process, our thought leadership, and our creation. What if we think of them in 17 years or 70 years or 100 years, that they are alive and that they can live among us? And what would they do? How would they behave, right? And how do we integrate Aboriginal or other cultures' perspective into that particular machine? And that makes a more interesting conversation rather than treating them like artificial and therefore assuming that they have no compassion. So that's one perspective. Second perspective about the way memories are being saved. So they were saying that AI could actually help Aboriginal save their language, you know, keep the culture. That's all very good. But I think also the way Aboriginals save or preserve or conserve their cultures and their memories and their history are very different from the Western way. So they have this thing called songlines. Songlines are a method of remembering a particular, say, for example, butterfly, the name of a butterfly, based on a location, based on a situation, and that's been integrated into dance and songs. And we all know that when we are physically, mentally, and emotionally engaged with a learning process, we tend to also become more connected to that particular concept, or we remember things better. And again, a scientist in California has done this research where they put 3 groups of students, right? And they take one group of students and say, okay, you're going to learn how to remember the names of 3 butterflies through mind palace, right? Mind palace is like a Western kind of a way of training our brains to remember things. And then the second group of students were taken to another room and they were taught the song line, the method of song line to remember those 3 butterflies, the names of 3 butterflies. And then the third group of students, they were allowed to remember in any way they like. And as it turns out, the students from the second group using the songline method to remember things tend to remember the names correctly 3 times better than any of the other students. The Mind Palaces students remember 2 times better than other students. So when we look at creating AI and the system of AI, can we integrate some of these traditional long-tested ideas to make sure that it is emotionally engaging our future generation, it is actually stimulating our future generation, and is also retaining some form of memory. And speaking of future generation, the indigenous have this concept called 7th grade or 7th generation stewardship, right? Very often you hear in the Western society as well recently about environmental stewardship, and you also hear about it in other forms like sustainability, which is a really sexy term for the last 6 years. So the same can also be applied to AI development and AI system integration. So if we think about it as in like, would this particular system be beneficial for our children in 7 generation time, which is a total of 140 years, then our perspective will also shift, yeah? And also, more importantly, I guess in the end, like we also have to ask ourselves, how can AI help us become better human beings? And is there any way to integrate this perspective into AI? And speaking of other ancient cultures, again, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a historian. In fact, my PhD 20 years ago was about adoption of innovation. And it's a cross-cultural study. Back then it was Web 1.0. It was really interesting because the way Asians think of adopting new technology is very different to West, right? So the Japanese are very good at gadgets, coming out with technology and so on, but they were one of the slowest nation in the world that adopts e-commerce. And when you look at Web 2.0, the social media and the social generated content, they are all very interesting, and they've all have now, after 12 or 15 years, now we're now seeing some repercussion. And now we're moving to Web 3.0. A lot of people are saying that, okay, you know, decentralized finance is going to be fantastic. It's going to eradicate poverty. Has it done so? Right? A lot of the indigenous community in Africa, South America, and also even in Australia do not have access to digital infrastructure. So there is this difference between digital inclusion or digital access versus AI access, right? So one is about, do you have access, good education, the basic infrastructure to get these information, versus how are you being included in this development and creation and designing of a system that would disrupt everything, right? It would transform all transformation. And so when you look at the Chinese philosophy, for example, because I'm Chinese, naturally, and I was born in Singapore, it is, when you look at the Chinese philosophy towards AI, and you can read it up yourself with the Chinese philosophers, we are less in a panic compared to the West, right? It seems like this existential crisis with regards to the kind of dangers that's happening. Of course, it's alarming, And of course, there has been a lot of abuse. But I think with a lot of ancient Chinese or Asian philosophy, so when we talk about Chinese, we talk about Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, which doesn't just affect mainland China, it affects all over Asia, because Koreans, Japanese, Vietnamese, Singaporeans, Malaysians are all adopting those kind of philosophies. And the thing is, change is a constant. Nothing is permanent. So when we see the adoption of AI, when we see the arrival of AI, we see it as a natural progression of human nature, right? And therefore, we see it as less threatening. And when we see it as less threatening, a lot of times it forces us to self-reflect, self-cultivate, and also self-enlightenment, right? So the Chinese are now talking about, okay, if this is going to happen in our lives, and it doesn't have higher hierarchy than the other, very similar to the Aboriginals. So the way they see the design of AI would be about compassion, ethics, and how it can support the family structure and the relationship. So again, a very Western structure, which is very individualistic versus a collectivism structure. So we all know that the implementation of AI very much has got to do with geographical and also cultural context. So perhaps when we look at the following discussion, we can look at including the other 60% of the world. And look
that's
at
a good prompt.
Yes, yes. And look at how other wisdom or other ancient wisdom could be integrated in this really interesting time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandy. It's so fascinating. And that was the whole point of having people coming from very different background and bringing those different views. And we're hoping that this mosaic of thoughts will help us again open up. Thank you very much, Sandy. Jérôme, you've done quite a bit of work on that aspect of AI literacy, on engaging especially youth and looking at democracy and citizenship. I'm really looking forward to hearing what have you found out? What gives agency to young people, and sorry, what your project is all about, because I think it's quite a fascinating subject.
Thank you, Stephanie. If you allow me a couple of words, building on what my colleagues mentioned previously, that I find extremely interesting. I think when we think about the future or futures, the first thing we need to do is to question our assumptions. And so, of course, here we are here to talk about AI. So, what are our assumptions about AI? And my colleague brilliantly talked about a Western perspective and the fact that we need to include the 60% other cultures, the views of women, youth, which is the project we're focusing on, indigenous communities, is extremely important and is necessary if we want to ensure that AI is legitimate. So my first question to you would be, what are your assumptions about technology? And from a Western perspective, I would say that I would maybe identify a couple of them. The first one is that technology progress is unavoidable. A lot of tech companies will tell us, we cannot stop it, and if we don't do it, other people will do it. So it's impossible. We cannot stop technological progress. And that's a myth. Of course we can. We just need to decide it. The second, and that gives a false sense of autonomy and agency to technology, which doesn't develop by itself, at least not yet. The other point is that technology development is always a progress. It's not always a progress. Or maybe a better comment would be, it's a progress for some and not a progress for others. So the question is, who is it a progress for and when? Always this question is always, this question of benefit and risks. Who bears the risks, who benefits from the technology, very much depends on who's engaged in the development of the technology and who is, and also who has a voice in the governance of this technology. And for us, it's very difficult to find the right balance between techno-optimism and techno-pessimism. And we don't want to leave to technical universities and AI experts and AI researchers and tech industry the narrative that actually technology is positive and brings a lot of opportunities. It does, but we need to find the right balance between the two, and that's a challenge, very much so. Maybe also 2 points to build on also what José mentioned, the dual use of technology. For sure, AI, like any technology, is going to be used for civilian and military purposes, going to be used for good and bad. So here we're talking about AI for good, but we should also be talking about AI for bad, because it's definitely already used like this and it will be used like this. And so this leads me to, for the exercise of today, to maybe a challenge. I think we're talking about, AI futures. I would say actually it's not so much about AI, it's more a question of society, question of politics, and it's a question of participation. So my question to you would be, how can we innovate? How can we find new forms of participation, new form of participation in AI design, AI governance, but also maybe futures? How do we, so what José mentioned, participatory futures. How do we do this? And as I mentioned earlier on, this is very much linked to AI literacy. And so we have been conducting this scientific communication project in Switzerland since 2 years now. We conducted about 160 workshops throughout Switzerland in high school, apprenticeship schools, a couple of universities, but not many, in the 3 linguistic regions of Switzerland. And this led us to, so basically what we do during these workshops, we do narrative foresight. So we ask youth to write stories about the future. And basically in these stories, we ask them to identify and discuss some implications, societal implications, democratic implications of technology. And we do that with AI. And it's very interesting because what Stephanie asked me to mention, I would say there are maybe 3 major themes that come up. So we have collected about 800 stories now, short stories. And across these 800 short stories, maybe 3 main themes come up. So these stories, we ask them to be positive. So we want inspiring futures. It's always more difficult to know what you want than what you don't want. So we want them to tell us what they want. And one of the main themes is the environment. The environment, the planet Earth, climate. So how can we use AI to ensure that we live in an environment that is protected, that is livable? So here, this answers very much to the eco-anxiety of this younger generation. So here, that would be the first. A lot of stories are around this. We use AI to clean, to combat climate change, to so a lot of scenarios, transformation scenarios around this. So AI as a tech solution for climate change, for example. Another number of stories are around community building and consensus building. And so questions, for example, around migrations. They see there will be a lot of migrations, a lot of movements of the population. How do we integrate these people? Maybe technology can help us better connect with others and find a consensus easily or more easily. And the last one is around knowledge, and it's very much connected to what José mentioned early on, empowering individuals and ensuring that individuals have access to the right information they need to be able to make a political decision. So here, this addresses the question about social media, fake news, deepfake, etc., that they're also confronted to. So these are maybe the 3 main themes that they consider in their stories about the future with AI, and that maybe could be interesting for your exercise today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jérôme. Thank you very much. We have had different point of view. We couldn't have a panel talking about AI without a person who also develop algorithm, and that person is Caroline, amongst other things. So what Caroline is going to talk to you about is invisibility in the data itself. And yeah, I'm leaving the microphone to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, being an academic, I don't like to sit in front of students or everybody else, as a matter of fact, when I'm not teaching. So I prefer to be with you and not here. That's the point. So algorithmic invisibility. Well, the first thing that you really need to have in mind is that everything is data. You are data. We are all data. And what's happening nowadays is that we are switching from the world of certainty to the world of probability, meaning that we are going collectively to choose what's going to happen next. It's not political scientists or political operators or political economists that are going to choose for us. Well, I have, as you see, a particular and specific love for political economists. Nobody is a political economist here. Okay, so whatever, because, well, the big problem is that political economists are looking for solution in the past, and we don't have any kind of reference in the past to what's happening to us today. And that's why we do have this big fear about AI. It's simply because it's new. And it's not really new because it's simply, well, something that was, as a matter of fact, theorized by somebody you might know, which is called Albert Einstein. So, well, Mr. Einstein prophetized, thank you very much, prophetized what's happening to us today. He prophetized it in physics. And the matter of fact is that nowadays, well, we are becoming physical minds, physical people in the sense of physics and scientific physics. Sorry, I'm a scientist. So sometime if I use a word or terminology that might not be understandable, stop me and ask for the definition. So invisibility, well, the problem is that when you look at the data sets and the way data is collected nowadays, you have a problem. Do you know where data is coming from? Please. All of us, yes, all of us, but all of us, we're here. I mean, we have access to provide data. So the data we're providing is essentially biased because we are the providers. And when Sandy was talking about access, it's not only access to technology or to access to artificial intelligence, but it's also access to provide the information. Now, if the information is not in the data set, forget about the information being anywhere in AI. And this is why we do have the problem of algorithmic invisibility, because before algorithm, and to have algorithm behaving quite adequately, they need to be trained, and they are trained using data, absolutely, data. So data is key. Data is absolutely central. And if it wasn't to work, it doesn't work, whatever. So whatever, I don't need a presentation. You will have it later on. So, oh, it's coming, it's coming. Okay, I need time. I need time for action. So algorithmic invisibility, it's when the data used to train those different kind of models is inadequate, might be bias, might be leading to bias and those kind of things. And the problem is that, let's say, 100% of the data we have today is biased. So this is why we need to change this. And we need to change this by providing accessibility to provide data to all communities. Let me give you an example. Do you know that 70% in France, I'm writing a French example, that 70% of the access, the first stage to access to employment are managed by algorithm. Meaning that if you want to access an employment in France, well, you need to go through an algorithmic filter. The problem is that the algorithmic filter does not include, for example, information about what is diversity. They say, oh, we do, oh, because it's based on announcements, on jobs posting. Read the jobs, go on the internet, read the job posting. We welcome people from diversity. Good. What is diversity? Now, if your algorithm is not trained to know what is diversity because it's not defined, well, people from the diversity or being diverse will never pass the filter. This is a first bias. And this is in AI all the time. So before about talking about, yeah, we need to have algorithm trained to be ethical. Well, if the data is ethical, they're trained to be ethical. As simple as that. So it will come. Okay, I know, it will come. Whoa, the network is low. So the key aspects of algorithmic and the invisibility, as you can see, 5 of those. Biased data sets, bias labeling, algorithm bias amplification, lack of inclusivity, implication, and consequences. The problem is that it's not only about data, what you see about data, it's also about metadata, which is the data on the data, which is the label. Now, it's not only the data you collect, but access also to label, because in order to train, you provide those algorithms with information on the data. And if you provide biased information because the way you're labeling is not adequate, again, you have an issue about algorithmic invisibility. So when you talk about those population not having access, it's also those population being, in a way, well, not considered also in the way you describe the data. Again, if we talk about people, about diversity, when building those metadata database, somebody doesn't know what diversity is. They, oh, well, it's the capacity to have different kind of whatever. For example, dishes, or what, because they don't just know the common definition. So you will have the algorithm saying, oh, when I see diversity, it might be diversity in food, it might be diversity in cats, whatever other species. They don't think about human diversity, whereas us as human, we think, when we say diversity, we think about certain elements. So the problem is not only the data, access to data, it's also access to labeling, which is never done. And when we talk about inclusivity, which is exactly what we think. So again, it's going to come, I know. So we wait. In the meantime, so if those key aspects, if you look at data standard, they're not considered in data standard. I'm here going to do a very short information about data, about what is AI training, because all the algorithms are trained. And if I just provided this definition, I'm not going to talk about it, it's going to be very quick, simply to show you that all the different kind of AI learning are based more or less on data. So again, and again, if the data is not correct, we have an issue. So again, I told you data quality is key. And what is interesting is not the first one, because everybody knows about the first one. I mean, it's absolutely obvious that you need to have, well, quality data. As a matter of fact, are we producing quality data? No, yes, maybe, why not? Nobody knows. Okay, well, as a matter of fact, again, we're producing in certain environment quality data, in other environment, not. Let me give you another example. Suppose that you want to make an AI to survey or to provide some sort of insights on, for example, employment of people out of diversity. I do that because it's one of the research projects I was working on in the recent year, and it was quite, all this information was quite stunning for us, and a discovery. Well, if you think, for example, that, okay, we're doing this in Europe, but the problem is that in Europe, you're not allowed to collect racial data. Ouch. So how do you train your algorithm if you're not allowed to collect and use the data where you want to do the analysis. But what you do is that you use other countries' data. You do some statistical correlation and elements and all those kind of things. And then you say, okay, I'm going to use this data from the United States of America, because they have the right to collect whatever they want. We are going to import this in Europe, and we're going to train our European algorithm using this American data. Okay. Is European sociology identical to American sociology? How can we train a European algorithm using American data? And we do it every day. So the problem is there. You also need, and what Jose said is absolute, you need to know and to collect also environmental data. Where, when, why, how this data was collected. Is this in standard? No. So the big problem here is that as a scientist, we spend our day using data sets, creating data sets. Synthetic data is absolutely a great tool. But the tools we use in order to create those data sets, they are biased. And all the fears about AI and I know 2 minutes, okay. All the fears about those AI issues, they are only, well, built on the fact that the data is not adequately structured, is not adequately collected, and is not adequately informed. So it's, in the end, it's us. It's us that we are going to choose. If we make our life, because we are all probabilistic beings, a nightmare, some sort of a collection of fear, the sum of all fears, or a feast. It's up to you. It's up to us. That's why we need to think about AI futures and to be good in AI futures. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Caroline. What different approaches, isn't it? There's something in there that I am picking up on, which is on that ontological design type of thread, which means, you know, where I use a technology, I use my glasses. That's a technology. And when I put my glasses on, suddenly I see the world in a different way. And when I read the news on my mobile phone, it goes through a filter and it changes me. So we're really into this conversation about all these points of discussion that come up with AI are really about how can we be better humans. I find it absolutely amazing that we're going into the detail and thinking, are we biased when we're recruiting? Did we have that conversation even 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago? Maybe not. And now all that AI, you know, is bringing is those conversations. We actually have biases as humans. I didn't realize. I didn't know until, you know, I started studying that phenomenon. So I think it's quite an interesting conversation, and you know, I think Jose had a wonderful provocation in that sense. I'm gonna close. I wanted to have a few questions, but we went over time. Yeah,
we've got time for Q&A. So we're going to have a morning tea in 5 or 10. We've got coffee out there, so we don't lose you. You can go and get caffeinated and not go too far. But I've got the roving mic, so I think we're a small enough group to have a few quick bit of Q&A, especially Jose stayed up late, so good on you, mate. Yeah, so has anyone got any burning questions? Steph, you've got a mic too.
Thank you. That was very, very interesting and very inspiring. So thank you for that. And let me ask some fundamental or stupid question about artificial intelligence. So I have several ones, but these are a little bit related. So my first question is, what you are trying to make is artificial intelligence or super intelligence? That means, so there is some delicate difference between like human-like intelligence or just simply super intelligence. So that is the first question that I'd like to ask. And then if it is something of human-like intelligence, is there any difference between artificial intelligence and artificial emotion? Dr. Chong and Caroline, you mentioned about emotion and something related, but artificial emotion is something of artificial intelligence, or these are two totally different things? So artificial emotion, it is not simply to read the emotion from a facial gesture or the voice tone or something like that. It is, I believe it is totally different thing. So these are two my questions.
Thank you very much. Two very interesting questions. Just a small reminder. When AI started, the guy who invented AI was named Alan Turing. And Alan Turing didn't talk about artificial intelligence. It came later in the 70s. People coming from computing started to talk about artificial intelligence. He talked about the imitation machine in 1951. First article was an imitation machine. Well, I believe that we started with imitation. I mean, we're creating in a way a sample of behaviors that are imitating us. Us, not in our diversity because of the data problem. And that's the first thing. Now, and that's why I talk about quantum earlier before, what's happening is that neural networks, matrices, the fact that we are data points, created absolutely unforeseen novel way of tackling and including emotions. And so we are not creating, I don't like the terminology artificial intelligence. It's because the market understands artificial intelligence that we use the terminology, but again, this was invented in the 70s. I like the idea of starting with an imitation machine, knowing that this imitation machine is biased because of data issue, and that we are going in the future to create something that is more and more, because we are going to provide access to data gathering and have access to more data. In the future, we might have something which is more the true imitation of society, to foresee society, maybe or maybe not. That's the first point. The second point about emotion, I witnessed yesterday, and I don't know if you were there, there was this very nice encounter between an artificial intelligence moved dog and a toddler. I don't know if you've seen that. I can provide the video. You've seen, remember. It was so nice because you had this toddler not knowing that this thing was artificial. And he started to discover as a fellow human, oh, this is something that is living. This is something that is alive. And he had emotions. But he had the same emotion, I believe, than discovering a real dog. We will consider this a real dog because we're adults.
Thank you. Very interesting about that question. In fact, when you look at Taoism, and also I assume you're Korean, we grew up in this mythology when we were growing up, you know, like Dragon Ball Z and all that. That's just comical, but there's just so many kind of deities that we have when we grow up. And so in Taoism, they have humans and they have superhumans or super species. So this is also a reason why, as I mentioned before, in the Asian culture, they don't see that as a stark different from us. They see it as an extension of us because it's being created in our image, right? It's an improved version of it, and it's part of nature. Yes, the machine part and all that. But again, when you put it into a Chinese philosophy, again, change is inevitable. Technology, like this gentleman said, it's inevitable, right? Then the way we see it as, well, this is just a natural progression of humankind. So that's how we see it. And I thought it was quite interesting you mentioned that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
One more question and then we can continue. You guys are hanging around.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't the end of the conversation. You want to give me the mic so I'm not screaming? So we do have one more question. Over to you, good sir.
Thank you very much. So I'm Anders Johnson. I work in communications with the International Labour Organization. The other day I came across an article which was looking at trust between people and technology, and it said, based on polling, that people sort of under the age of 25 were apparently more comfortable trusting generative AI with their worries around their mental health than they were with trusting actual doctors. So my question to you is, A, how do we actually build up this trust that people have with, you know, artificial or generative AI? And is this a good or a bad thing in your opinion?
Can I jump on this? So we tend to see technology very differently depending on the age. So you know, if you're born, or if a technology emerges before you're 20, you find that absolutely normal. If this technology emerges while you're between maybe 20 and 30 or 20 and 40, you find that super cool. And if the technology emerges after 40, you're basically outdated and you're very critical. So I exaggerated here a little bit, but I think this is a very important point. What we find natural or not. What you're referring to here is really this question of literacy. So, and this is true for AI, but this is true as well for digital technologies in general. There are lots of studies that show that youth has a lot of digital skills. They know how to use the tools, but they lack the literacy. They lack the critical approach to these technologies. So they would say, you know, I trust more what I see on Facebook than or on Instagram than what I read in the newspaper or in a scientific journal. So this is extremely important. That's the role of universities and education in general, to reinforce this literacy and to ensure that they understand what is happening behind the technology, what is the business model behind it, what are the issues. We talked about algorithmic invisibility, we talked about different cultures. This is extremely important to include. So that's what I would, my comment would be. And maybe to jump on what you said before as well about artificial narrow intelligence. For me, there are three types of intelligence, artificial intelligence. There is artificial narrow intelligence, what we're experimenting right now. And then there are two other steps, potential future generations of AI, artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. Artificial superintelligence between being the point of singularity when the human being is not the most intelligent species on Earth. This is very much hypothetical and political and science fiction. But there are lots of discussions about, should we govern AI today or should we govern potential artificial superintelligence? And there are very different views about this. So this is really interesting to see.
Thank
so
you.
that's it.
Yes, I was about to get the microphone. I think, Jose, you might take that up also on the question of intelligences. And you heard the panel and you the rest of the panel, and you heard the questions. So you have a couple of words of to wrap up this panel?
Oh yeah, just very briefly. Well, I mean, first of all, I think I agree with everyone. You know, as Caroline was saying, who's missing? You know, who's missing from the data? So I think that invisibility is so fundamental. I think from what Jerome was saying, so important to have understanding of how people see technology across age, across cohort, and those narratives are really fascinating. And I think that narrative foresight has so much potential to help us navigate both the past and the future. You know, narrative foresight is not just about understanding stories, but about how our understanding of the past can transform how we envision the future. and those preferred futures. So I really think the narrative foresight approach is really fundamental. And then, you know, from Sandy, what I picked up was just the importance of culture, of allowing the diversity of human cultures to enrich the way in which we approach this dilemma. So, so yeah, I'm just basically in furious agreement. For me, the issue of trust, trust must be earned. You know, we don't go into a relationship and throw ourselves in and decide we're going to get married the first day. You know, we learn about that person, and we find out what their values are, what our values are. Do we like each other's sense of humor? Do we like to be with each other? You know, do some of the things they do drive you nuts? You know, they probably will eventually. So to me, trust is earned, and earning that trust means that socialization process, and bringing all the different forces to bear upon the dilemma. So yeah, I don't want to give anything away. I think all must be earned by those that wield these powers.
Thank you very much, Jose. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Jerome. And thank you, Caroline. Please join me. Thank you. We're going for coffee. Come back, because now we're going to the work.
This is a workshop, and we're going to work after the break. So
Yes.
we'll see you in 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, hey, hey. Hello. No, not. We will in a minute. Sure. Don't get me started. I just want to say something. Everybody, I think we're going to take a few more minutes because the food situation is a bit of a challenge, but I think we're going to get going soon. I think we're talking minutes, like not long. Yeah. Is our panel here? Is our panel here? Oh, they're all here. Yay, amazing. Okay, then I think we should prep and get ready to do that. Okay, I need to get our slide shufflers to shuffle through the slides. But I do have a clicker. Okay, where's... Okay. I'm going to go... Everyone's ready to go? Okay, everybody. We are going to reboot the room, get ourselves ready for the afternoon. And all good facilitators respect the time box they've been given. So we're going to start on time for the people who have showed up on time, which is all of you wonderful people, and the people who are joining us remotely. I think we're going to do a quick where we've been and where we're going, just to reset and recontextualize where we are in the day. And then we're going to get some more wonderful insights and information from amazing people. So we've managed to get through the morning, form a team with a purpose around an alternate future that we're all engaged in, passionate about. We've connected with a person that's not here, and we've considered the empty chair, the people that are not fortunate enough to be able to represent themselves in the room. And we've put together a day in the life in the future that we will be very happy about. And now we're going to talk about pathways. And I'm going to hand over to Stephanie to take us through how that connects to the panel in more detailed, specific terms. And then we're going to welcome the panel and get your notebooks out. And as a lot of people are, which is great, jotting down all of the wonderful things we're going to hear. Over to you, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you very much. It might be a bit confusing. Is there some new people that just arrived and haven't participated yet to the morning activities? Yeah,
If you're new,
Yep.
amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Have a seat down the back there. If you just plonk yourself down, there's no wrong place to sit down.
So I realized that we might have confused you a little bit this morning because we forced you to think about a persona, and at the same time we forced you to think about the person that is not in the room. And we talked about what's the day in the life, and I mean, it's amazing. I've looked at many of the ideas and I've discussed with the moderators, and right away I can see just some incredible ideas and approaches that you brought forward. We have looked at what is possible, the type of futures that we would like to happen. And we know that there will be some barriers. There will be things that we will need to overcome for those futures to be possible. And the panel that is talking today will be, they're all quite amazingly experienced in knowing how to navigate all of the different challenges that you've already started talking into your about in your individual teams. So I'll kindly invite the panel to get. Yeah.
Cool. So they can come here. We've got little microphones to make it easy. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a big panel, 5 people. We'll try to stick to the time, but at the same time, we want to have an opportunity to hear from those voices. It's my great pleasure to have Felipe, Castro, Quiles. Thank you. Sorry, Lisa Dethridge, Gudela Groth, Francesca Rossi, and Emilia Jaworski joining us today. Overcoming barriers means having also a different type of mindset, isn't it? And it would be great if you could give us a little bit of, there's a reason why you're on this panel. You've been doing this type of work for a long time for many of you. Could you give us a couple of minutes introduction, each of you, and then we'll move on to the question? That would be great. Thank you. Emilia, do you want to start?
Surely. So, hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be with you here today. I'm Emilia Jaworski, and I direct our Futures program at the Future of Life Institute. So, for those of you not familiar with our organization, FLI is an organization that works to steer emerging technology away from large-scale risk and towards benefits for humanity. So, our Futures program focuses on that latter piece of how do we realize positive futures with technology. And we've done sort of all kinds of activities, including world building that we're doing today, which is super exciting to see. But I think positive futures start with what futures do people want? Because if we don't have visions, and specifically visions that are hopeful and exciting and motivating, we don't really have a lot of incentives to act or to build those futures. So we think a lot about figuring out how can we develop more visions and ideas about how to make a positive future that are representative. So right now, when we think about the dominant narrative of where we're going with technology, that's one that's primarily constructed by industry, which has huge conflicts of interest, and also is not necessarily representative of the diversity of values and ideas and religions and societal structures that people may want to live in, because one person's utopia is another person's dystopia. And so as we focus on how we want to build the future, it's important that we have inclusive ideas that represent a spectrum of positive futures, and ensuring that we create a future that enables that choice and enables that optionality. And so I think the SDGs, which we're all here for today, is kind of one place to start where we kind of have a global consensus around, these are things that generally humanity has decided we want to achieve collectively. And we know that AI can be a really powerful tool on that, but we also recognize that incentive structures are a big reason we haven't realized the SDGs in terms of motivating where investment dollars go, motivating actually translating technology into solving problems. And so I think as we're all here today and thinking about what futures we want to architect, that's also a key thing to keep in mind, is that the incentive structures that guide the development of technology, we also need to reimagine those along with the technology itself.
Thanks a lot. Isn't that exciting? I know. Francesca, do you want to give us a little bit of a spiel on what brought you here and all of your background?
Yes. My name is Francesca Rossi. I work at IBM. My background is in computer science. I'm a PhD in AI, and I've been in academia for 30 plus years as a professor of artificial intelligence before joining IBM. So I am well aware of the differences between the academic world and also the corporate environment. And at IBM, I'm part of the research division, so I'm still doing research in AI, but I'm also the company AI ethics global leader, which means that I lead the internal and external initiatives around AI ethics, whether it's the AI ethics board that I co-chair, that gives the governance around AI ethics within the company, risk assessment and education and many others, and also some partnerships that I will talk a little bit later on about AI ethics globally.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Actually, I'm going to keep you for the end, Felipe.
Oh, okay.
You know why? Because I
speak a lot.
No, because because you're the only man on this panel. We're talking about AI. I'm sorry about the lack of balance, but at the same time, yeah. If you don't mind, I'll ask Lisa. Lisa is joining us, and it's quite late in Melbourne. Thank you, Lisa, for being with us. Could you give us a couple of minutes introducing your wonderful self to the rest of the room? Oh, you're on mute, Lisa. Sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, Geneva. Yes, I'm at RMIT University in Melbourne. We are a university of design and technology. I work in the area of ethical AI. Is there such a thing? I'm not sure. And I also work with our Australian Internet Domain Authority, which is charged with keeping the internet free and accessible in Australia Pacific region. I work with industry quite a bit. I have, during the last few years, been training AIs training chatbots. Worked on a project with OpenAI, designing an ethical chatbot named Amber. And at the moment, I'm working with another company in Palo Alto, which is looking at anthropomorphic design of AI, which I'll talk about a bit later. Very happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We'll come back to you in a moment. Gudela, do I pronounce your name properly?
Yep, perfectly. Thank you very much, Stephanie. And thank you again also for me, allowing me to be remote. I think the whole world is discussing AI. So I'm at a summer school discussing those kinds of things in Biarritz currently. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity to be part of this panel. I'm a work and organization psychologist by training. I work at the ETH, the Federal Technical University in Zurich in Switzerland. And I chose long time ago to go to a technical university as a psychologist, because as a work psychologist, especially because technology drives in lots of ways how we work. So my remit is much smaller than what we heard before. So my futures are more kind of the futures of work, under kind of the overarching question of, when we talk about human in the loop, I mean, what humans are we actually talking about? Can they even be in the loop still? Who's accountable for it all? How does accountability move more towards developers and companies that create the technology? And we are currently discussing that a lot under governance of, I mean, how to manage risk and who's really accountable for managing risk. So that's what I'm working on with companies, with regulators also. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Felipe.
Felipe Castro Quiles, Caribbean, from the Caribbean, an island called Puerto Rico. I co-founded and I'm the CEO of 2 organizations, and I want to take you down the journey in a small story. Everything happened because I was training a model by the name Levelship in Emerging Rule. Is one of my companies. It's education technology for K-12. And while I was training that model, we were training that model, we recognized, and this is something important, keep that word in mind, because recognition is very important in AI models. Anything machine learning recognition has a lot to do with. We recognize the fact that our target market or segment was not included in any of our, not even our own models, because we lacked the information, the necessary information, not data, and I'm gonna make that distinction later, the necessary information to train our models. For example, and that's when we met our partners at NASA Singularity University. We started a new, shout out to you, and we started another company that is an international company for Latin America, GENIA Latinoamérica, to start including the parameters needed to be recognized in the models and systems of the future. And I'll tell you why, because inclusion is important. Inclusion is the acceptance of value in its core element. You accept the value of other individuals, of nature, of life, of our ways of thinking if you include. And that's the future that I know that we all want. We want an inclusive future. We don't want exclusion anymore. And I've been listening from all of you, great things. But at the end, what is most important is that we need to recognize that we also have to put our parameters ahead. We need to start sharing what the machine doesn't know and what we don't know. For that reason, I'm gonna.
Sorry, I'll cut you off because we'll go to the different questions and then we'll come back. Is that okay? We are doing real world, building of futures, and there's lots of things happening even on those storyboards out there, and some of it comes from signals that people can kind of sense. Emilia, what real world initiative have you experienced or come across that you see as signals of things to come that could change the way even of how we conceive of environmentally and ethically responsible AI pathways?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot, and I think those signals are probably based off of things we're already starting to see in the real world. So on the sort of topic of AI for solving problems, I think we've seen some really exciting and inspirational examples of this, of when you actually focus systems not just on being general and sort of being more powerful, but actually applying AI to solving a particular problem. So thinking about what happened with AlphaFold out of DeepMind, which was a system that solved the protein folding problem, which was something that had like stumped human minds for a very long time. And we're seeing this also in things like nuclear fusion reactor design for climate or developing new antibiotics. So there's a lot of like very exciting sort of problem-focused models that we're seeing coming out. I think there's also ways that we can apply AI to societal problems that are really exciting. So there's sort of work around public AI development of like AI as a public good. There's also work, and I highly recommend people look at the work that the Collective Intelligence Project is doing on AI to actually improve democracy. So we learn a lot about the ways that AI can undermine democracy. There's also ways you can apply it to make democracy better. The same way that AI can, proliferate disinformation and misinformation, there are also groups working on AI to improve sense making and to improve our ability to sort of cut through all of the spin and really identify where are the facts in the world. So I think and similarly on the polarization point, right? The algorithms we have today are very much incentivized to polarize us. You could as easily design systems that are incentivized to promote understanding and identify areas of consensus. So it's all about how we design these systems and like the incentive structures under which these systems are developed. And I think that's where governance comes into play. I think there's really exciting things happening in the AI governance space. I think we all feel that they're probably not bold enough or necessarily moving fast enough, but you can see the seeds there. And, by analogy, my background, I'm a physician and scientist by training, and I look at the creation of the original FDA and sort of in the world pre-FDA, they were selling poisons. Things were not safe. People were making all sorts of claims. And then government came in and developed a set of sort of common sense based regulations, especially in the initial development of the FDA, and even the playing field, and said, here is a safety standard to which you must be held, and things need to be as good or better. And that totally changed the incentive structure of the industry, because instead of a race to the bottom, you now had a race to the top. You had incentives to make your system safe, make your technology safe. And that has been one of the reasons the United States has been the leader in biotechnology. It actually was something that was really pro-innovation, and by creating that race to the top, created a really flourishing industry. I think the counterexample to that is nuclear, right? We could be living in a world that's full of ubiquitous, clean, green energy. We don't, and that's because we made some really bad decisions early on. And when things like Chernobyl happened due to bad safety engineering, it just kind of doomed the future of the industry. So I think that as we think about both how we want to imagine futures, there's sort of the developing tech itself, and then there's also the environment around the technology that also can be innovated on to make that world happen.
That's a really interesting idea, because suddenly we're not just thinking about AI as a solution somewhere out there, but as something that is the pathway to certain outcomes. And it might be less sexy in some ways, but much more efficient. Francesca, you have a lot of experience of putting the frameworks in place and thinking about AI ethics. We're not starting from scratch. There's already lots of things that are in place that will help us navigate and create those pathways.
And definitely, and the important thing is to actually build on top of each other, no, rather than going in parallel and starting from scratch all the various initiatives, because we would be much more accelerated. Maybe somebody can put my slides on. Thanks. So I'll just give you a short, description of some of these initiatives that I've been part of, starting actually with the Future of Life Institute. In 2015, when I joined the Scientific Advisory Board, that was one of the first organization that I joined, and I participated in Puerto Rico at the first beneficial AI conference, so there is already a connection here. And that was the first time I think that Max put together a multi-stakeholder group of people, and that has been really the important step forward, no? That not only technical people were discussing issues with technical stuff, but there was the recognition that there was a need for a multi-stakeholder convening.
Yes, sorry, Francesca, the technology is not going as fast as us.
Okay.
And so by the time you gave your presentation to me, it hasn't yet been made available on the ITU website. It's coming now.
Okay. But I can say something in the meantime while we wait. So yes, so that is very important on the multi-stakeholder part. And at this point, after 9 years, 10 years, the fact that you need a multi-stakeholder approach, I think, is recognized by everybody. So of course, it introduces challenges. First of all, the way you talk to each other, the being heard, being understood by the other people that you work with, but definitely it's the only way to go in order to understand the issues of the technology, because these are not technological issues, but they are social technological. So you really need people that understand the technology, yes, but also people that understand the impact of a technology on society, and they can understand how to regulate the technology and so on. So maybe, okay. So yes, so in these 10 years of AI ethics, sometimes I say that there have been 3 great big phases. The first phase was mainly a phase of awareness, and it was very reactive. I see this problem. How do I put a patch to solve this problem for this algorithm or this other algorithm, like the compass algorithm, bias? So what do we do? And then another one, and then another one. So the awareness phase, which continues because technology evolves, and so new issues can come up. And so the awareness is from all the stakeholders being aware. But for example, for the compass algorithm, the awareness did not come from the technical people. They came from the more social awareness people that said, oh, let me look at this algorithm and I see that there is bias here. And then the technical people recognize it. And then they said, okay, so what do we do about bias and so on? So awareness of the issues. The second phase is a phase of principles. You say, okay, there are these issues. Let's write down some principles. And everybody wrote principles. There are more than 100, 200, I don't remember how many. There is a principled AI project at Harvard that counted them and put them in some visualization. So there, everybody wrote principles. How do we want at a high level behave on these issues? And the third one is the practice. How do you translate these principles into practice, into concrete actions within a company, within a regulation, in another organization? So really concrete actions from the principle. And in this path, and these 3 phases are all continuing now. At the beginning, they were kind of sequential, but now they're continuing because there are new issues. So you need to be aware all the time, continuing, and you need to have more principles because the new, and then, so they are going in parallel. And so the organization moved from a very only reactive approach to trying to be more proactive over time, and again with the multi-stakeholder approach. So to mention few of them, the first one that I co-founded together with others was the Partnership on AI. That was founded in 2016. Is an organization that was co-founded by 6 companies. but with the intention of being multi-stakeholder. So that's why over time, over the years, it added many other stakeholders. So right now there are about 100 partners, of which 20 are companies, and everybody else is universities, civil society organization, ACLU, or so these kind of organizations. And it's again multi-stakeholder. The term that partnership on AI people use is when there are these convenings is productive disagreement, because people disagree a lot because ACLU and IBM and Amazon and so. But we try to do that in a proactive, in a productive way. And the goal is to build best practices and guidelines. So together, because there was the recognition even in 2016 when it was co-founded that not one single entity could put together the best practices or guidelines, and there had to be some consultation with others. So, for example, the most recent ones were best practices on synthetic media, which means also, generating images and videos and so on, foundation model deployment, and also not the most recent one, but also on transparency tools. The second one has a very similar name, but is a completely different one and is much more recent. It's the Global Partnership on AI. So the Global Partnership on AI is instead a set of governments, nations, governments that decided to get together to understand at the global level what to do about responsible AI use, deployment, development, and so on. So right now, I think there are about 30 governments, very located very differently in the world, like there is the European Union and several of the European countries. There is the US, there is Singapore, so there are several countries, about 30 of them. There are 4 working groups. I'm co-chairing with Amir, that it must be somewhere here, the one on responsible AI, but there are one about data, future work, innovation, commercialization. And in these working groups are populated by experts. They're called experts, but they're not just AI experts. They're also, again, multidisciplinary, nominated by these countries that decide to be part of the global partnership on AI. So there are governments and experts nominated by governments that together try to address various issues and to give recommendations to AI teams that build AI solution, but also to these governments, to how they can facilitate the development and deployment and use of responsible AI in their territory, in each one of their territory, but also in collaboration in a global way. Another one is, the World Economic Forum. Yes, World Economic Forum, companies, governments, global reach, and a lot of work on AI that has its own global future councils on AI that do various things. For example, one is called AI Futures, just like this workshop, and is about value alignment and red lines. Last, another one, the UN, OECD, and we're getting closer to where we are here, which are about governance, about positive and negative implication. Also, the OECD as an expert group that I'm co-chairing called the AI Future. So you see there is a lot of convergence about thinking about the future. And the UN with the advisory board, the body on AI. Then there are also governments that play their part, and there are regulations that are coming a lot in the European AI Act, also in the US, a lot of various things, more scattered than in Europe because it's a different legal and regulatory system. Here, for example, I show you a global view of policies and regulations around AI or around data privacy. There are many that are coming up and many more that will be coming. So it's really a very scattered landscape globally. And then companies are doing a lot. Finishing. Companies are doing a lot. As I said at IBM, I'm leading what we do internally, AI Ethics Board, decision making, not advisory making, decisions. If something doesn't pass the AI board, the AI ethics board, the deal cannot be signed. Okay? So from high-level principles to actions, to risk assessment, to education, and so on. And then there are also the researchers, those that build the new technology. And the researchers are doing a lot, and they are being more and more aware about the societal implications. And I personally am president of AAAI until the end of this year, and I see a lot of involvement of the young people. For example, AAAI has 6,000 members, half of them are PhD students. So a lot of young people that are getting into the field, and they need to be also educated by their organization. So final slide, implications of all this experience that I had in all these organizations. So first of all, whenever we talk about value alignment or fairness alignment and so on, this pushes us to think about our own values. It was mentioned this morning already. And so already by doing those kind of reasoning and convening and discussion, even if it does not have concrete impact, it has an impact in our minds that as individuals, as communities, we improve our own understanding of our own values. And this is already to me an outcome, an important outcome, because for me, scientific technological progress should help societal progress, individual progress. So also when we talk about audit and scrutiny of the AI, this pushes us also to think about our own behavior. If I'm auditing the behavior of an AI system, I immediately think, okay, but what about human behavior? No? So we mentioned this morning as well. Again, multi-stakeholder initiatives are very important also because they help us and force us, sometimes it's not as natural at the beginning, to be open to other people, to be more inclusive. And then when we go out of these rooms, we are more inclusive in everything else that we do. The SDGs, of course, are very important because they give us a target. And if I just finished saying that all these initiatives have impact, concrete actions, but they could be much more accelerated if there were much more coordination and building on top of each other, rather than saying, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and just not even talking to each other. Thank you.
When do you sleep at night? You're involved in so many things. It's crazy. Thank you very much, Francesca. That's okay. You open up on that, and I'll go to a different subject in some ways, but the one that you just opened, the fact that dealing with AI, and I'm going to ask Lisa to come in a second. When we think about AI, it's we talked about it this morning. We're looking at biases. We're looking at a technology that changes us, changes the way we see the world, and therefore it changes us back in return. There's lots of things. Are we actually, do we need to think about mindset and paradigm so that we rethink even our approaches to AI futures? Do you think AI would help us be better humans, Lisa, or to develop new ecological consciousness for people and well-being?
I think that's a question that's up for grabs, actually. And AI is a mirror for us. So it shows the good, the bad, and the ugly, doesn't it? Not just the good, unfortunately, and not just the bad. So it's a mirror that, like a funhouse mirror, that reproduces aspects of ourselves. And today, if we could move to the next slide, please. And well, let's sit here for a sec. Okay, I'm going to deliver 3 key scenarios from a recent futures exercise, yet another futures exercise that I've done recently with the Australian Internet Domain Authority. and with Oxford University. And we were interested in talking to people. We did interviews and workshops with international stakeholders and thought leaders across big tech, civil society, academia, internet governance, and business people to explore people's hopes and fears around AI and the web in the year 2044. And I think that this could be useful to what you're doing there because it might give you some language. And this is just a navigation tool. We're not looking in a crystal ball. I think we should always be very wary of people who say they know what the future will bring. Run away from those people. No one knows what the future will bring, but we can definitely speculate and cook some ideas. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the first of the three scenarios that may be of interest to you when you're considering your own future scenarios, and remember that I'm giving you the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just the good. Scenario one, we called state of alert. So we are assuming that at this stage in 2044, national security is the priority and AI enables a surveillance state. So because of increasing tension around global competition and climate change, security has become more important than liberty to many citizens around the world who are fearful and risk averse. Instead of representative democracy, AI has allowed various forms of governance that are controlled by surveillance systems, and the internet is fragmented in this case. AI now supports an internet which is divided into geographical blocks that are opened or closed by a system of locks and drawbridges. Information is owned by the state in this scenario. Technology is a tool for control and surveillance. Citizens or people within the state can earn social credits and access to technological privilege by doing civil duty. Dissent is limited to covert activity in game spaces where people spend more time, rather like the movie The Matrix. Travel and tourism and education have been reduced and people are living more and more online. In this world, in 2044, information is the property of the state and it is seen as a citizen's duty to produce it. Our identity is biometrically linked to the state, who access our biometric data, our medical data, our eye prints, fingerprints, and so on. Privacy in this world is seen as unpatriotic. Privacy actually may block or impede your upward social mobility in this world, and sharing your data is seen as a cultural norm. So you might consider that for a moment. This pretty much is a scenario that we would like to avoid, I suggest, although we can see tendencies already at work in our culture today. So trigger warning, if this stuff is upsetting you, good reason to move away, to think of situations where we could move against this kind of scenario. Next slide, please. The next slide, scenario 2, ecological civilization, is much closer to my own heart. It's about a culture where collective resilience is a priority. Climate catastrophe can no longer be ignored. New geopolitical powers are supported by a global network of ecological cooperatives. That would be a key word, wouldn't it? Ecological cooperatives who collaborate via mutual aid, either on land or online, with AI at the centre. And this will be achieved by AI connecting to the Internet of Things, more likely the Internet of Everything, we could say. So this is very central to questions of food security, because we're talking about a digital infrastructure that now extends into Earth orbit as it does today with satellites and computer networks which interact with plants and animals, often with no humans in the loop. So if you would consider, you know, the surveillance of crops and herds of cattle, for example. So we're talking about a world in which AI allows for new forms of haptic, immersive, and sensory interaction. Sorry, they're big words. Haptic, immersive, and sensory interaction between humans, animals, environment, and AI. This is a very interesting option for us because in a world of ecological civilization, information should be open wherever possible, and all citizens would play a part in assisting ecological balance. Identity is transparent, so all things can be audited. And this has major implications we need to consider for content and intellectual property, as data is now openly shared and checked by cooperatives. Internet protocols promote openness and resilience, interoperability, and open scrutiny. Individuals understand their place in helping to put community first in order to strengthen a fragile ecosystem. And individuals reduce their voluntary digital interactions. This is a very interesting consideration. One way of reducing both your surveillance profile and your surveillance footprint, as well as reducing your environmental impact in such a culture, would be to voluntarily reduce your use of online technology and your online interactions. That's something that we don't often hear suggested. So think about those things, interesting ideas. Let's move quickly to scenario 3, which is another rather dystopian one that we've called The Price is Right, because
we have a couple of minutes left, Lisa.
Very good. Thank you. The Price is Right is a scenario where profit is the priority and corporations have taken over many of the tasks of the nation state. How did this happen? Well, citizens in the 2020s lost trust in the government's ability to protect them against cyber attacks. And at the same time, high-tech tycoons, celebrity billionaire tech tycoons, became seen as saviors of humanity. Does it sound familiar? This is a world where public services such as defence and police are now in the private domain. Citizens in this world are consumers first and foremost, and big business boards write the rules of governance. Environmental crises are the main challenge still. Information of every kind is a tradable commodity in this world, and identity, which may not be a bad thing. Maybe we should all be able to sell and trade our data. Identity in this world is multiple, provisional, and tied to individual subscriptions across different platforms, a bit like an extreme version of today. Are you an Instagram person or a TikToker? So to finish off, privacy in The Price is Right has become a privilege to be traded by brokers on data exchanges. I'll leave it there, but that's some language and some concepts that might help you navigate and steer around your own future scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's another set of provocation that we're going to be using in the next exercise. Take notes of all of the presentation we have right now, because I think it's quite fascinating. There's a number of, Gudela, there's a number of comments that were made about how we manage risks and, you know, how we think about it and how we mitigate it, what the type of risks that AI has brought onto us or that we have brought onto ourselves. You have a suggestion for a different approach to all that?
Well, I'm not sure whether it's actually a different approach, but it's actually much more to use existing work in risk mitigation, in risk analysis, in incident reporting, in learning from failure, which I think is all there already. We've had it with many other technologies. And I guess earlier we heard, I mean, FDA on the one hand side for medical devices and drugs, on the nuclear maybe on the other side, but even there, I think there have always been attempts. And I'm very astonished, I must say, and maybe you whatever, teach me wrong there, that in discussions that I've had with people, I mean, in the AI development domain, they might talk about sandboxing and red teaming and all of that. But when you bring them back to basic principles of how do you do a risk analysis? I mean, what are bad and what are good outcomes? How do you get to evaluate maybe even quantitatively what's the likelihood of one or the other? It seems like they're not very aware of that. I mean, I was at the Stanford High recently at an event where somebody from Microsoft was talking about red teaming, and he mentioned kind of defense in depth, which is a very old concept from the nuclear power industry. And I asked him about that, and he said he wasn't even aware of that. So I just thought maybe a starting point is really to learn all of that. And what I find special in around AI, and also listening to the previous speakers about the different scenarios we might look at. First of all, obviously, we can make choices on how opaque, how complex, how dynamic those systems should be, and therefore how controllable or not controllable they are. And in making these choices, I think one very special thing to me about the most recent wave of AI development is that it has come into the hands of us as consumers much earlier than into the hands of people within companies. And that means that whatever normal kind of institutional boundaries we would have, and again, maybe use FDA as an example, when you look at drug discovery, it came into the workplace, right? And the workplace is in various ways a regulated environment, be it, I mean, from the workers' side around trade unions, be it from more the business side, regulating the actual work processes and products. And now we have these tools as individuals, and there's no institutional boundaries around us. And I think the first kind of moves towards regulation were all about trying to build these boundaries for us as consumers, as individuals using these technologies. And the most recent move, I think, is really interesting, that this non-certified, non-risk assessed, nothing technology around LLMs has reached all of us at the push of a button, and we bring that to work. We start working with it there, and then companies struggle: should we allow, should we not? Universities struggle: should we allow, should we not? And that, I think, is quite unprecedented. And in that sense, I think we need to rethink governance and rethink also how much kind of self-regulatory versus prescriptive governance and regulation can help us there. But I don't have the solution. So it's just, I think we can learn from the past quite a bit, but there's elements also that really need new developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kitrhona. Yes, it's we've been discussing about everything that exists already. We started just by getting, the glimpses of what are the signals that show us a pathway through. We talked about what is already available that we could use and make sense of. We were provoked by looking at the different types of futures that could be possible depending on the pathways that we take. It's been I mean, it's a very, very interesting subject, but at the same time, I'm wondering if it's also subjects that are very Northern Hemisphere talk. And I think, Felipe, you might have a different way of looking at the obstacles that we're facing and of things that you've seen happening all across Latin America that gives you some ideas of different type of pathways. Could you give us a little bit of that?
Certainly. I first have to say that Latin America is open for business, and there's a lot of business. So come to me after this. But the very important thing to realize is that there's a world out there that is not us, that doesn't understand us, that doesn't live our own lives, that don't even act under the same parameters or perspectives or ideas or understanding. There's a world out there that is the majority of this world. And unfortunately, we're developing systems that are only exclusive. And I'll get into the fire now. And that I often give the idea of it happening just because of this little element, and it's that human mindset is linear. The futures are exponential. We cannot build exponential futures on a linear mentality. It'll be like trying to find how horses are riding faster to a place. We already have trains and airplanes. If we thought that way before we started building all these beautiful exponential technologies, we would have not ever been able to fly, because it was impossible. Believe me, it was very impossible one day to fly. You would say, you're in the town, look, I'm going to invent a flying machine. They would say, this guy's crazy. We should kick him out of the place. Well, what I'm saying now is, and I started with this inclusion, we need to start including those perspectives and parameters into the development of anything we do, because it's not only that we're leaving them behind, but we're affecting ourselves because we depend on them, because these are the people that are feeding us. These are the people that are taking the water that we shower with every day to you. These are the people that are building our cars, autonomous or not. These are the same people that make livelihood happen. And we have to abandon that linear mindset before the exponential futures catch up and they forget us. And that's very important. I would love for you to leave from here with that in mind. And in the how much time do I have? Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So, okay, let's make it more interactive. This is a workshop after all. I would like to see, by the show of hands, who considers themselves a teacher or a professor or someone that is imparting learning around. Well, we have quite a few. That's wonderful. Who considers him or herself a business person? Stupendos. Stupendos. Who here is a spy? I don't see hands. and I want to make a point with that. That out there is data, because someone may be a spy. Data is raw. What we just saw is information, and we have to separate both, because the exponential future depends on data, not information. Information is what makes us linear, because we're stuck in a mentality of back in the days. And I can say that because I was born in a colony. It's still a colony. And that colony has nothing to say. And we're making an announcement here. In 2025, the Summit of the Americas is gonna be held in Dominican Republic. We are making it happen for it to become an exponential futures mindset, and all of the dignitaries that go there go to our events that are basically, and that's what I told you, you have to be there. And this type of conversations have to happen because those people that are leading our previous systems are not the people that unfortunately are building the exponential futures. And that's a future that is interconnected. And interconnectedness is extremely important. Time?
You're all good, buddy.
I'm good, but don't.
I'm just going to do just a little bit of a check-in with the crowd and the group.
Yes, please. Who's the spy?
How are we all feeling? There's been some pretty heavy stuff we've just navigated through, right? Yeah, it's heavy. And I know Amir's feeling it, we're feeling it as we're holding this space for everybody. And if we're talking about an alternate future, here's my challenge. I'm facilitating and I'm feeling this space as we're building it. How do we turn this mood to what we would call an appreciative mindset? Like right now. What can we do as a panel to think, hey, how might we? What if we? It's a provocation because I'm sensing we're getting into a space that's a bit dire. So I think we should give the panel maybe a little bit of a right of reply on what I've just said and maybe give them a minute each to, what can we do? Because we're going to break into an activity now where we want to go towards something, not be scared of something. Yeah. So maybe we'll go through the panel. We'll give that a bit of a go, rinse through and see if we can. I just want to lift this mood and get us into a different headspace. Is that fair, everyone? You're not buying it? You're seeing the dark side of where we could go? Or go for it, yeah. Okay. You're comfortable? Good. Lisa did a good job at the dark. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just testing the temperature because I want this to work for everybody, right? Yeah. Yes. You're loving hearing that voice coming out strong? Yeah. Anybody else?
It's a voice that you don't usually have because you don't
Yeah.
see in this panel a guy from the Caribbean or
Yeah.
Latin American
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And that's very important because we need to go out there and grab the ones that we don't see here.
Yeah.
They are the ones who need to start telling us what we ought to do.
Sure.
Because we already,
Yeah.
that's inclusion.
That's okay.
Because they are valuable.
I'm just checking in, everybody, because I'm here to make sure everybody feels that this is a constructive, helpful, and the dark side and the difficult things are difficult.
Yes.
And I want to open them up to everything. So I just wanted to, because Amir has a voice, he really wants to think about. Amir, did you want to say a couple of words just in response to that, or you're okay with what I'm saying? You're right on, good. Any other voices before I just want to move through the panel and give you a little bit of time back? Yes. Yep.
I haven't finished yet.
We're coming back to you. Don't worry. Your voice is not going to be disrupted. I just wanted to just do a check-in on the room.
Thank you very much. It has been fantastic what you shared with us so far. I would love to learn what are you grateful for despite all of the challenges related to this topic. So I am grateful for the fact that we are still having the time and space to make the changes happen, right? It's not too late. We are all accountable for the future that we are co-creating.
Very good. I think I've done my job just to check in. Did you want to finish your presentation and then we'll go through the panel and get a little bit of a right of yeah.
No, for nothing. I was getting there, and it's quite important to recognize that what can be done and what's being done and what should be done is elaborating collaborative platforms that allow for the exponential future to happen interconnected and autonomous. Those are two things that are out there. And we were discussing previously, the only thing that humanity has not been ever able to do is to interconnect themselves. We still in 2024 have a north, a south, a west, and an east. And we all live in the same beautiful planet that we need to protect and preserve. And it's because of the fact that the future depends on that planet, not so much on us, on that planet, on the point that we are discussing here. Whether artificial or not, intelligence depends on inclusivity. inclusivity, again, like I come back to it, is the recognition of value, and what is more valuable than intelligence? With intelligence, we move around. So what we can do, we bring all this stuff together, we go home, we pick up somebody that we have never seen here, we bring them to the table, we recognize their perspective, we understand their perspective, and we make their value talk to us. And I was going there because data should talk to you. You don't talk to data. Data is raw. Data is raw, right? I'm down the line. So that's the most beautiful thing that you brought up, and the most beautiful thing that could happen is that when you get out of here, recognize who is supposed to be here to help us build that exponential future that we all want and we deserve. Yesterday, the countries were talking down there, and they all basically agreed. But the point is that they don't really recognize that there's other people, there's a world out there that doesn't understand anything of this. When you think, now start thinking, this is the last thought, start thinking of that person that you understand is being underserved and underrepresented. Once you do that, bring them forward, get them out there. That's education. Thank you.
How do you say, Felipe? You say, thanks for living.
Thank you for living. That's my thing. Yes, thank you for living, because it's a valuable thing to do, right? To live.
That's how we met.
That's how we met.
Felipe came around and said, thanks for living. And I'm like, oh my God, nobody ever said that to me. And I'm, yes. Well, thank you very much. We're running out of time, but okay, yes, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll pick up on something that, you're saying there's a feeling of heaviness. And let me try and take one, tackle it, maybe why that may be. When we talk about governance or we talk about multi-stakeholderism, we can't put a false equal sign between that and representation and individual agency. That's assuming governments represent the interests of the people. Multi-stakeholder can often be used to assume all stakeholders at the table are of equal power and standing, which is just not the case. When you have industries pumping unprecedented trillions of dollars into a technology, you can't imagine that everyone's on equal footing. That's today, right? That doesn't have to be what tomorrow looks like. And I'll take one example from my own industry, which is the institutional review boards that are done in parallel to what happens in the FDA. So this is the idea that independent of a company, independent of someone creating the technology, there's a coalition of experts and of community members that are included in that as well, that make a decision as to whether or not you can do a drug trial. And that has to happen before a drug trial starts. And this has been a really effective model for having actual inclusion of the community in decision-making, actual inclusion of independent scientists that don't have conflicts of interest in that process, and at the community level, realizing that each community has different values and different risk thresholds for whether or not they would want to pursue something. And this has been kind of a global model where there's variants of the independent ethics committee worldwide when it comes to drug trials. So that's just one example of even despite really intense corporate pressures, there are bodies that exist like that today. And I think it's sort of upon this room to say, yes, maybe this is where we're starting and we're not feeling agency and representation, but that does not have to be where we go tomorrow. And it's about reimagining those institutions just as much as it's reimagining and developing the technologies that's going to take you someplace that's more of Lisa's aspirational futures than the gloom and doom ones.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you very much, Amelia.
Yeah, I said that I found all the other speakers also very, I learned a lot. I also learned a lot from the 3 scenarios that were described. I think that they are actually very similar to scenarios that the OECD was also considered in the expert group on AI futures. And I suspect that we'll end up with a combination, with a scenario that combines some of those aspects that were some of those surveillance or corporate or the other one, you know, some of the good and some of the bad, you know. So probably will not be any one of those scenario exactly, but a combination of that. But I have this point of view that AI and the use that we decide to do AI is something that we decide, we together, of course, in an inclusive, with an inclusive we, which is a good thing, because it's not like an asteroid that comes in collision with Earth, you know, it's something that we build, we decide how to use it. But on the other hand, when you have the power to decide, you also have the difficulty of making the right decision, you know, including the right people and so on. So there is a good and bad side of the same coin, you know. But I think that we are not passive. We have an active role, and we have to use that active role in the best way.
Thank you very much, Francesca.
I think we can thank our panel.
Yes, thank you very much to the panel. It's been very, very informative, and thank you for making the time. And some of you I know are still sticking with us and helping us go through the rest of the afternoon.
The panel members are around,
Thank
so
you,
as we
Lisa
move around,
Data
yes.
Online. Looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. At some point, all of you, hopefully.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate
Thank you
your
very much.
attendance.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great workshop.
Mhm.
Whew. Okay. So yes, that was incredible. And I think what we're getting in the way we're tackling today is a unique combination of doing thinking, information, action. And we'll flip now back into out of our heads and back into our hands to do some work, which for those of you that have just arrived or have arrived since we put these artifacts on the back wall, could you put your hands up, please? Who's our newcomers? 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome. Amazing. Yay. So we're in the middle of a process which you are more than welcome to join into. We've formed some teams, so we're going to get you slotted into a team, and they'll inform you about what we've done so far and what we're going to do now. I'm going to explain. Essentially, where we've come from in our journey today is we have identified some themes that are aligned to the SDGs, and we've created a person who is in a different future, an alternate future where a scenario is available to them. And we're working through a day in their life. Well, we've worked through a day in their life, and we've identified how these touch points into AI technology has enabled an alternate future. And what we're going to do now is form back into those working teams and think about all of the challenges and blockages and things that are in the way of enabling one of those touch points.
Yes, two things, especially for the people who just joined us. This table has been working on cultural heritage. So if you're interested in joining that table, go ahead. This table has been working on justice and institutions with the no motto. This table has been working on preventative healthcare. Feel free to go and join them. This table is completely focused on education, and they're super passionate too. And then at the back, we have a table that has been focusing on food and food networks, subsistence.
So vote with your
subject.
feet.
So vote with your feet. Go with the team, because now you working with the team is actually what we need you to do.
So let's get back into our teams, and we'd like you to go back over to your day in the life and have a real good discussion about one of those AI-enabled touch points. One of them that you really want to burrow into that you think has a high impact, high leverage to support this future alternative day in the life. And we're going, once you've done that, we're going to give you further instructions. So I don't want to give you too many things to think about at once. So reacquaint your new members to your day in the life, get around the wall, have a good chat, and think about one touch point into AI that we want to interrogate a little bit further and have a deeper conversation about.
Especially because you might have some new people, or even for yourself to kind of reacquainted yourself with your scenarios and your visions.
And your
Maybe it could be useful to go back to your board and revisit what the day in a life looks like, and who is that person that you have brought with you in that future, and the like.
And folding in all of those wonderful, wonderful insights from the panels. So I'll get the moderators to head back there too, please, to work with your groups and to help facilitate those conversations. And we'll check back in a few minutes and see how you're going. Okay. So if we could all please return to whence we came at our tables, that would be amazing. The team, yeah, I took it down because I made a sign. Just AI. Just AI. Could we have a seat? We'll reconvene for a sec. So I'll get you to have a seat. All right. Okay. So let's do another quick pulse check here. So we're going to do a bit of a how are we going as a team pulse check again. So, sense of identity, shared little mini culture, bonding and forming. So 5 is we're amazing, high performing. 4, yeah, we're doing okay. 3, meh. 2, we're struggling. 1, we're dysfunctional. And 0, we're really not a team at all. So hands in the air, how are we as teams? Let's see them, come on. Bonus for noise, we got noise. This is a timid team. The timid team, they're the non-conforming team. Yeah, that's the bimodal team over there. That's fine, terrific. 5 here. And of course, there isn't a right answer. Do whatever you like. As long as we're engaged and we're awake in the afternoon as we head towards the finish line. Thank you for leaning back into that activity. Thank you for coming back from lunch, re-engaging your brain, absorbing that second panel, leaning back into the work, going from the head back to the hands and having a good go at creating a compelling alternate future for your person. So we've left it very open in terms of how you'd like to play back your day in the life and this touch point that really mattered, this moment in their day in the future that allowed that person from the future to be the best version of themselves. So the challenge is now to play that back in a compelling way, and it's up to the team how they do that. I challenged one team to do a role play. I'm not sure that, well, with 3 minutes notice, I'm not sure they were interested in my suggestion. But we're going to give you the mic and the floor for one or many of the team to just do a playback on the work you've done and the moment where AI enabled an alternate future for your person. So we will go from this side of the room to that side of the room. So
What's our motto again? Yes. Okay, so no, I'm good. Okay, so we are the diverse team, diverse AI team, and our motto is so choose what is most tolerable and not what is most preferred. So that's our motto. Okay, and our persona is Trish. So Trish has a bit of the creator and explorer and a little bit of rebel in Trish. And so Trish has like very good agency, and she works through her day with some time in the afternoon to choose to relax or choose to pause and take a break. And so 2060, you know, Trish is here. Trish may or may not be neurodivergent, but Trish has a microchip embedded out of choice by herself. Now, what that does for Trish is high performing, so it helps her plan her day. Now, Trish can choose what time she wants to take a break, but then the microchip tells her, okay, time to pause now. You've had a lot of work done, so time for you to pause and take like a personal break. And then Trish goes and works out a little bit with the help of AR, VR. So she works out with her friend or her personal trainer who she's personally connected with. And while she's doing her workout, she has like this array of suggestion of AI generated music due to all the cultural taste that she's acquired from listening to different and diverse things. And then Trish, after the workout, she's told, okay, time up. It's time for you to disconnect from the digital world now. Your sister's coming to visit. And here's like options of cultural foods that you both tasted that you can try to cook or make for her. And Trish chooses something and is trying to cook and connect. And Trish also knows that with her mom, who may or may not have ALS, her mom has a Neuralink as well embedded, and which really helps her. What it does is that for her mom, who's used to be super forgetful, Trish is able to communicate with her mom. Trish is able to get historical knowledge of cultures that could have been forgotten if not for the help of this microchip and this microlink that's in her head. And also, there's also the bit that because she works from home, she doesn't travel as much as she should, so she doesn't have too much cultural awareness. But this microchip is able to support her in her work and speak and tell her, like prompt her on how to behave when meeting with a new client, and try to talk to her about or give her prompts of how subjects or cultural topics to use to connect with her clients and her customers. Now, the thing is this, with Trish, she has informed consent about each of these different actions. The system that operates is able to tell her, look, if you choose this, this is the end result. If you choose this is what is good, the consequence. And she's able to say, yes, I want to continue, or no, I'm not able to continue, disconnect. There's also the ability for her to say, you know what, I do not want you to plan my day. I do not want your support, and she disconnects completely. Now, the microchip is also reversible. It means that Trish can go to her doctor and say, I'm done. I don't want any of this. I don't want help. I don't want this new technology in me. And then she completely disconnects. So that is Trish. If I have missed something, if I have missed anything, please, I can ask some of my teammates to connect and talk about it. Thank you.
Well done. And what was the one moment that mattered in that day? I would imagine towards the end of that day when...
Yeah, at the end of the day when Trish, she's getting ready to go to bed, she realizes that she's actually living a rich life with some support that she didn't expect to, live in the past. I mean, it comes with some challenges, but the benefits are somehow outweighing some of the challenges. She's able to connect with her mom, whose memory is preserved through some of the technology. She's able to have time to connect with her friends, even in a hyper digital world. She's able to work out, have some well-being, even in a hyper digital world. So for her, the benefits were outweighing some of the risks, and she's able to contribute in a meaningful way.
Very inspiring. That was fantastic. Ooh, the bar is really high. Who's coming next? Come on, come on.
Should I sing a song first and then let you?
Who is the representative of the education team? Here you go. Do you want me to hold the microphone since you have, or I can hold that if you want.
I'm not good with microphones.
That's okay. I'll hold it for you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Imagine yourself in a community where you would like to play a part. And the only thing preventing you from engaging with your community and making positive contribution is your disability. The disability can come in a form of physical, or it can come in a form of economic. And for that reason, you are excluded not by your disability, but by the barrier society have put in your way. And at the same time, you see the world passing you by and there are problems to be solved. You wish to have the means or be allowed to take part, but society say no, because you don't have the right credentials and because you do not have the grades required. That is me in 2061. Now come around artificial intelligence and generative AI in particular, which now enable me to navigate the world of education and be able to learn, and not only learn from others, but be able to contribute to others' knowledge as well. Imagine what that would do to my self-worth in 2061, because I'll feel valued, respected, and also fulfilled. That is the world harmonizing, no silos, is envisioning, where individuals who are today excluded from our education system now have the tools not only to engage, not only to learn from teachers or in a learning environment facilitated by a teacher, but also contribute their own knowledge from which that teacher also learns. The student enriches or learn from the wealth of knowledge that the teacher brings, but the student also have the space allowed for him to contribute so the teacher can also learn. So they are not only learning from, not only the student learning from the student, from the teacher, but the teacher also learning from the student. Imagine that enriching environment where learning is not only a place we go to acquire knowledge, but learning is a place we go to share, contribute, and participate in the community that we are in, finding solution to problems that matters to all of us in 2061.
Thank you very much. That's a noble goal. Thank you. Oh my God, I want to live in 2061. Who's going to make me like a little cloud that can travel through time? I don't know. What about your team? Coming in front? Trying to take that out. Oh. Okay, you've got the mic.
No, we can share. We can share. Okay, so we're discussing a woman named Olive who is 40 years old and she's pregnant with her first child. We were going to act this out, but I was a very poor 40-year-old pregnant lady. Olive, however, is a particularly caring, nurturing, bold and complex woman. She's quite progressive, I believe. I think that's what we arrived on. But she's living in a community that we've managed to create a nice, dense urban environment where we brought everyone back into the city and we've developed a system of sort of community self-sufficiency in some ways. So we're doing that to protect wild areas. We've brought farming into urban environments, vertical farming, things like that, housing with set up farming systems, all of that kind of thing. So the community has become self-sufficient through basically tools to match human need with the ecological and community capacity to produce for those human needs.
Oh my goodness, right. Wow, okay, I should have prepared better, right. So the key moment for Olive is in the morning when she wakes up. And she goes to the bathroom, some of us might do, and she has her first kind of scan of the day, body scan, AI-led, right, making sure she is pregnant, she's got the right nutrients, what's missing, what does she need to include in her diet today to make sure she's living her best and healthiest life for herself and her child. So after this, the AI will come up with a list of suggestions for her meal planning for the day. And that's not only based on her needs and her unborn child's needs, but also on what her house has produced during the last night, the last week, what's available for her to harvest from her house, what's available to exchange with other houses in her community, and also what's available to perhaps 3D print from some bio waste. So then once she's made her meal preparation or a meal choice, then it sets a whole chain of actions in motion, which I think you're going to talk about. I don't know if I took over that, sorry.
Yes, so she selects the food and kind of the AI takes over and supplying it. And most of the work in the society of Olive is done by AI and robots, and there's not so much to do for her, but still what is most valuable to the people is goods which are created by humans. So during the day, she does a little bit of sewing, maybe as a present for someone she likes. And also people value human interaction a lot. And care work is therefore still done by humans. And since she's pregnant, a care worker will visit her during the day. Yeah, and for lunch, she's having a community lunch, meaning that everyone in the community brings what their homes actually produced. And then either a autonomous robot chef creates the meal or they do it themselves. That's actually up to them. And afterwards, I think she has a little bit of free time.
So we have discovered UBI in this highly advanced society. Everyone is getting fixed income already, but they still produce some stuff themselves. Most valuable stuff produced is handcrafted or created by humans, taught by humans. So despite the fact that everything is done by robots and it's highly automated, most of the things that are most valuable in this society are human-made. And food and cooking and sharing meals and sharing the food produce system with your community, with the people in your city, that is a way to connect. So our Olive only works 4 hours a day because everything else is automated, and her work is something that she highly enjoys and feels motivated about. She has a wide choice of activities that she can do that are also highly creative. In the evening, she relaxes with AI-created entertainment, maybe theater, maybe a movie, maybe something else. And if by the end of the month her UBI runs out, then she finds something niche to do in the evening because she doesn't have to work at a fixed time. And she's living a full, holistic life that is also going to be a bit longer than the lives that we have today, because she's living healthier, she's enjoying her community, and she's hopefully much happier. This is all from us.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks. Wow. I'm wondering if there's already bits of that we're living in. There's something about what Francesca was saying before, you know, there's this mix of ideas of, there's some things that will be, we can imagine will be evolving, you know, in a crazy manners, and others that will be just being very human and not really changing that much. I love your approach. What about you? Ooh. the justice is served. I couldn't do better. Who's taking the mic?
I can pick it up if you want. Well, I think, I think different groups work at different rhythm.
And put it this way, we can come up with some bluffing idea, but I think we have nothing that is really stable at that time. One thing that we actually been struggling is we had different understanding of what this person will be taking with us. Whether we have to jump in the future, forgetting and then imagining how that person now would live, and some group have done that, and some others group have done others. And I think, you know, from an institution point of view, the scenario is we have assumed that things are more or less going to continue the same, like states and institution and stuff like that, or which is a big assumption. Then some of us in the group have difficulty with. Another assumption is that you told us we have to imagine a world we would like to live into it. Personally, I don't really like to have the life of truth or whatever is a graph. I don't really have something in my brain tells me, you know, this is going to be good for you or bad for you. I'd rather jump out of the plane right now. And so we actually had a very constructive discussion. And as a typical collective intelligence, we were not yet ripe for coming up with a scenario on that. And one of the reasons we're discussing as my colleague is because institution and justice is transversal and all the group have already used it to some extent, or thinking wistfully why we're complaining. But I think I don't think we have much more to share now than that, except that two challenges we thought that AI would be very useful is, on one hand, how could we make people participate? Because we have this notion, oh, you know, we don't, at least, I know this is not in all country, but if we base in Switzerland, the reason why there's so low turnout is not because people don't have information, they don't bother go voting, because we're still very individualistic and we think, you know, we don't need to vote, other people are going to take a decision for us. And the second, and so how we could really make that kind of, and, you know, enhance that with AI. In 40 years from now, that's, you know, we have not come up with, but we thought that'd be a very important touch point. And the other important touch point was this issue of making technology accessible equally to all generations. And that would be an equal participation from, you know, the younger age to the age of 95, or, you know, I guess now it's no longer 80, but from 95 or year on in this society, it became much more difficult to participate and to vote. So that's the two things that we ought to cross, but we have not yet, you know, been able to come to something more fruitful.
So you have universal access, as you've just said, is irrespective of age.
Yes. May I add something? So we had actually, the vision was like that. First of all, it's the person which is like at least 140 years old, looks like 60. So because this is what will happen, we assume. And so it's a very active but experienced and knowledgeable person. And this person lives in like most like a nomad, and so we were talking about like a very freestyle model, like distributive society, network states, whatever. So not these states like we experience them today. So all the institutions are more distributive and people are willing to participate because they have more impact on their own lives. So they have more. So we really struggled to create the day of this person. But what was the idea that this is a much older person, but very fit and very active and intelligent and willing to participate. And so, and the conclusion was is exactly that. What would be the idea for this justice and institutions is that how to make people participate, how to inspire them to participate. And this is where some AI solutions would work. So if AI developers are ready to work on that, this would be a great contribution, but we couldn't come up with more detailed ideas.
Because I could see that you've actually interrogated so many things, which was great. You had all of you your critical thinking cap on, and you looked at the words, the exercise, and you questioned absolutely everything, which was quite amazing to witness. So I
something that we also talked about. We did touch upon
if technology was going to foster decentralization, but also some technologies could lead to centralization because of the expertise that is required. We talked about whether this future society will be more into technocrats, right? And if you would have maybe an AI avatar who knows you exactly and predicts your voting or your ethical preferences, is going to vote for you and do many of the boring other stuff for you, but also about maybe you would have like an AI cooker who knows which food to use, that sustainability markers are approved, and efficient-sized resources to maybe reduce CO2 productions and then maybe tackle other problems such as homelessness, because we were also pondering about, if we think about a child in Haiti with many conflicts about states and homelessness, for example, violence, how AI could also help with that. And we think could be a way in the future that maybe AI could know which houses, and I think it was talked about in COVID, right? Which houses are empty, and then we would solve homelessness because we would be moving people around with AI, for example. And I think that's something.
You could have informed policy on that front too.
And then also the last one, which is pretty cool, AI informing and predicting potential futures of the politicians that you vote for, and then mapping out which populations would be harmed based on these voters that you do, which is kind of scary as well, but a lot of ethical stuff, but yeah, that's...
Oh my God.
Well, you've got your scenario.
This is the group that had a scenario but didn't write it down. So that's great. Look, let's do a time check. Let's do a day check. Let's sense where we are. The afternoon's getting long. We've got a new person who's arrived, and we need to do them justice by introducing them. And I'm going to let Stephanie do that. We're going to be wrapping up in the next 30 to 40 minutes, but nonetheless, we have a guest who's made an effort to come and who is going to be, I think, with us tomorrow as well. Maybe.
Diana? I was going to I wanted to have a little chat with you, and oh, do you want to go at the front?
Sure.
Yeah, what if
I'm yours. I'm here for you.
Thank you so much. I know you gave up a lot to be here today. Oh yeah, why not?
Sure. Can you see me if I sit? It's not a big difference if I'm sitting somewhere.
That was funny because we met earlier this morning, and we are just broached on the subject of towards the middle of the afternoon and going into the end of the day, we're going to start looking at, well, how do we make these things happen that we feel are worth, doing and fighting for? And you jumped on it. I said, yep, I'm your person. Could you give us a little bit of, for the people here who don't know you, a bit of background of all the things you have done in that domain?
Well, thank you so much for showing up and being here at the end of this day. It's exciting to be together, to be at the UN, and to be at this moment in our evolution and revolution with AI and as a species and on the planet today. I am Diana Aiton-Schenker. I'm so happy to be here. I am the CEO of Leonardo, the International Society of Arts, Science, Technology, and I direct our partnership with Arizona State University, where I'm a professor of practice both at the School of Arts, Media, Engineering and the School for the Future of Innovation in Society. I'm very honored to learn from you all and from the wonderful facilitators, Stephanie and the team who've been putting together this great day today, as well as Amir and Kitrhona and the team from TASC. It's really terrific to be thinking about AI futures and our future life. What I wanted to share some thoughts with reflects some of the things that I've heard today and that I've thought coming into to this time on how we're shifting from thinking to action. And we do this through Leonardo at this nexus of arts, science, technology, putting our vision of a world that it will be more just and regenerative and vibrant into action through our publications, our programs, our partnerships. But wait, there's more. Because making a difference in the world is something you can trust you are already doing right now here today, because we start where you are. And when we look at the problems of the day or the complexity of the time, this double twin helix of AI rising revolution and climate catastrophe through the climate change and mass extinction, it can be overwhelming or paralyzing with the narrative of fear that dominates our media stream and our anxieties. And the work here today that you've already begun puts thought into action of a narrative of hope. We know that hope is the greatest antidote to fear and the greatest inoculation against fear. Why does this matter? Because fear can paralyze us. It can make us deny where we are or where we could be. Hope opens new possibilities, new channels, new directions that we can take active steps on going down those pathways. One of the speakers earlier today mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'd like to reframe that, looking at AI futures in terms of our action as the good, the bad, the ugly, and the gorgeous. That's where you all come in. That's where we come in together. We come in at gorgeous. The good are the benefits that we're so hopeful for in the promise of AI and its application to accelerate the SDGs and bring about this regenerative, just, and vibrant world. The futures that Stephanie wants to be alive for in 2061. How great is it to say, I want to be alive there? You inspired that. The bad is the risks we all know about and the potential damage and harm to human life, to the interspecies world, and the interintelligence society of which we are a part. And the ugly is what happens when we let the fear narratives take over. It's existential threat, and it is truly terrifying. But the gorgeous is ultimately stronger. And that's where the action that you take comes in. So the gorgeous scenario is not just some of the wonderful ideas you came up with in your groups, but it's recognizing, as our friend here said, that different groups have different styles, different pace, different approach, different dynamics and outcomes. That's as it should be. Trust that you are where you are supposed to be. And even if we don't have the result that is a solution yet, we do have the process that is the action of strategy in looking at the complex times of today and of our AI present. I think it's as important to reframe the complexity of strategies in response as it is to look at solutions. Because as we solve for a problem, something else is inevitably going to emerge. So problem solving is a short-term action. Longer-term action that also begins today is challenge strategizing. That's something that is sustainable, regenerative, and ultimately very creative. So I'm delighted to see where we're going to continue to go today, where we're going to go tomorrow, and where each and all of us will be building that AI future that we all want to be living in.
Thank you very much for those words. Thank you. And it's a perfect introduction to the rest of the day too. Thank you very much, Diana.
Would you, before the clap, can you just give us another minute on challenge strategizing? Just stretch that out a little bit and give us a little bit more under that term of phrase you've used. Would you be able to just give us a little bit more on that?
Certainly. So again, I think that the challenge strategizing is not an excuse to avoid problem solving. It's a longer term frame. It's a longer term lens, and it is liberating because it gives you the tools, it equips you individually and collectively with a response to the challenges that will continue to arise around our world and throughout our life. That's the strategy. So strategies are informed by a response to the challenge. We know what the challenges are around us today. We don't know what the challenges are that are down the road, but we know that we are guided by companionship. We are not alone, no matter how lonely you feel, no matter how isolated you may become. We are all in this together. Strategies are informed by curiosity and by compassion and by what I like to call a values in action compass, the via compass that shows us the way, the via. And the values in action compass that informs our challenge strategizing, that's kind of a new combination for me, yeah. We can hyphenate it or something. Are four cardinal directions that guide me and that I hope will be helpful collectively. They are inspiration, intention, integrity, and impact. So as we challenge strategize, as we think about the longer term framing of problem solving to strategizing around challenges, myriad and yet to come, we are guided by the inspiration, that aha moment that makes you feel alive when you feel your breath deepen and your heart beat. When you are inspired, you're on the right path. We're guided by intention, the vision, the clarity to see the change you want to be, not just be the change you want to see. We're guided by the direction of integrity, that which is whole, integral, integrated, which is honorable and essential. And we're guided by impact, that wonderful two-word phrase that should follow the end of all those things that excite us. So what? So what? What is the impact? And ultimately, we are guided by the trust that what you are doing, the action you take from the thinking, is making a difference. It does have impact. So those are some thoughts on challenge strategizing.
Brilliant. Wow. It's interesting when you plan facilitation events and you line certain bits up, sometimes some magic happens. So what we're going to do next has just been explained for me. So I really can't build on it other than we'll give you a bit of a template to have a go, and it's how we're going to close and all of that rich criteria and wow, you know, it's all what we're going to squeeze into this next short punchy activity that'll be a segue into tomorrow. So we don't want to go to blockers. We want to quickly move on. So the word challenge is really got what pricked my ears up in what Diana was saying, because when we were planning, we know we have to move to action and face into the challenges that are in front of what we're trying to aspire to imagine and achieve and realize in these alternate futures. And I know it's the end of the day, and I know we're all a little tired and probably ready to pack it in. But what we're going to do is have a short time box of, I think, 20 minutes, a really heated, focused conversation using Diana's prompts as an input to have a go at writing some questions. And we've templated it for you. Could you, or you might say, could we as a team, or what if we, or how might we, it doesn't really matter. The same version, an aspirational statement that if we created, developed, or did, or executed something in some way to face into a challenge to solve a problem for somebody who wants to achieve a goal in the context of the work you've done today. okay, in the context of the work you've done today for your person of the future. So we're really leveraging the work you've done on the posters, leveraging these moments that have mattered in their future. And now we're saying, well, what could we do to bring that into reality? And it's a challenge because it's super difficult because we've aspired and we've thought and we've jumped way out into the future. Stephanie, did you want to?
Oh, you've already, when you did your presentation, you already mentioned a few of these AI futures where you say, oh, this is where we have a problem, and we can imagine that this will have to be overcome. And if you've already done that at your table and you've been thinking, oh, but we also had that idea about this and that, and we think it's actually very relevant to our subject, pick that up and reflect on, well, what is it we could do to take that challenge and to start bringing it towards action? Is there anything we could get started, a conversation, a project, something where we put a team together, or even much larger, something that will say, could we remove those type of barriers for, I'm trying to remember your challenge, the last one you put to us, that. Yes. Yeah, well, that's a good one. Could we find out what the future of politicians will bring in terms of impact on the people, and especially for which people, your people? And
So have a go at writing one question. And the idea of the versioning there is that as we learn and interrogate, and this is where we'd like you to spend a focused 10 to 15 minutes at your table, and then let crazy talk to the other tables, and cross-pollinate and interrogate and iterate your question. But spend some focused time in your team for 15 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for a bit of roaming and cross-table conversation and see if we can get to a better version of our question. And then I'm just going to finish now. Tomorrow, we're going to have another slightly nuanced exercise to pitch the whole body of work we've done today in front of us, a fresh pair of eyes, a few fresh pairs of eyes, and that'll be another way for them to hear for the first time those beautiful stories, the challenge you want to have a go at as a team, and then they'll give us some more feedback. So we're really deepening and enriching it, is that a word, with new people in the room for a short, punchy 2-hour session if you feel free to join us. So we've got 15 minutes now on the table, then we'll do 15 inter-table, and you want to say something?
Oh, I was about to say, you should give a little bit of an idea that we're almost finished with the day, and that, people are just starting. Yeah.
Yes, we're almost finished. We'll be wrapping up in at 20 past. Hello, everybody. We're going to do a bit of a close and wrap up. We are going to I think it's a positive sign when people just love the conversations they're in, right? Because isn't that the job we're here to enable? So this is not a close of the workshop event, the experience. We're going to have a short, fun, punchy session tomorrow where we're going to get a fresh pairs of eyes in front of you and your ideas, should you want to come back. So I just want to do a little poll on who'll be coming back tomorrow. The room is a lot smaller, and we just wanted to get a bit of a sense of who wants to come and just finish off. It's 10 o'clock and it'll be done just before lunch, so it's a very short one.
Yeah, it's 10 to 12:50.
Yeah. Okay. So as long as we've got a quorum, yeah, we've got a good, terrific, and we head down the back. Terrific. Okay. I mean, if we have 8 to 12 people and we've got a few ideas and we can continue the story and deepen the story, yes?
Yeah, there's
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, cool. Yes, so that's tomorrow. And what we're going to do is collect everything you've done. And then we're going to take some of these ideas, and I think it's almost like a story pitch. I don't know, I made that word up. To tell a story and pitch it to a fresh pairs of ears. And we want to see who can say, present the most compelling story. Folks, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost there. We're almost there. So I'll get you to say a few words about your sponsorship today, and yes, and your and TASC and what's going on.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Kitrhona Cerri. For any of you that I haven't spoken to, I think I've spoken to most. Executive Director of the TASC Platform. We've been extremely happy to support, not sponsor, Stephanie and Niall in this workshop. We're based in the Geneva Graduate Institute, just next door, and we're a platform for collaboration and networking and innovation on the future of work, and increasingly on the future of working together across multi-stakeholder, multilateral spaces. We really focus on driving the mindset shifts that are needed to create the futures that we want to get to, and to imagine those futures with more diverse perspectives in the first place. And on the 20th of June, if any of you are in Geneva or online, we're holding a Future of Work Summit where you can expect more hands-on discussions drilling into challenges related to collaboration for a better future. We'll be looking at the impacts of AI and migration on how we manage systems for the future of work. A huge thank you to, oh yes, here it is. You can find. There are QR codes outside. Big shout out to Juanita, our events and comms coordinator, Yasmin, project manager, and Patrick, our lovely photographer, Leo, who just left, and our co-chairs, Cedric Dupont and Gudela Groot, who were online. I did say Yasmin, our project manager, too. Didn't forget her.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
have been amazing.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I do need to just mention the time when I quite abruptly jumped in on top of this fellow here, and when he was speaking. We just had a few people that had some noisy voices in my ear, and I'm managing a lot of things during the day, and some people wanted me to say something. Unfortunately, it tended to spill out in the middle of your presentation, so I do apologize for that if it was a little bit disruptive, but we were concerned about a few people's opinion about the mood in the room, and I wanted to do that check. So if anybody felt that was a bit weird or out of character for me, then it was coming from pressures that are beyond my sphere of control. But anyway, we got there in the end and we finished the day.
Thank you.
Wonderful, everybody. Well, with that, unless you've got any closing
No,
remarks.
we'll leave you alone now. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. No, you'll. So we're here tomorrow.
Sorry? Oh, yes. QR codes.
Yes, and it's important to realize, I think that all of these stories that we're doing today, tomorrow with Source Transition, we're going to look at some of those projects that will be community-based, and that's, well, you have ideas and we'll all flesh them out a little bit more, and we will onboard the project. Whoever wants to work on it with us, we'll do that, and we'll try to see how we can take it to the next stage. So that's one of the things that will happen tomorrow.
We were going to say that tomorrow, but we said it now. So that's exciting. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.